This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of what if Naruto fell in love with Nemu and Isane. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no time, let's start the story.
Orihime opened her eyes slowly, glanced around, and discovered that she was lying on a very nice bed in a rather comfortable room. When she attempted to sit up, she winced in agony. She heard someone approaching her and caught a glimpse of the door opening. Someone said, "You need to lie down." She recognized the voice, so she looked for its owner and saw Isane standing above her. Orihime stared up at her in disbelief. She had a lot of questions but was unable to articulate them. Isane checked her wounds and said, "Let me check your bandages." She appeared to be healing well and would soon be able to move without experiencing much pain. Isane grinned at her, but she questioned Orihime's purpose. Although she was aware that the Soul Society would eventually send someone to find them, she was surprised that one of Ichigo's friends would be sent. Isane told Orihime, "I'm going to let you rest and we will talk later." Then she left the room, leaving the orange-haired girl to think on her own. Orihime never expected to see Isane when she woke up. She was lying on a cozy bed, safe, with a familiar face close by, whereas she had expected to wake up where she had fought, still bleeding. She closed her eyes slowly and let sleep take over. She would soon find out the answers. Across the room, Isane closed the door behind her and saw Nemu and Naruto sitting on the couch waiting for her. Naruto put his free arm around her after she settled into his lap. "So how is our patient doing?" he asked, making Isane smile. "She's doing fine," Isane replied. "But she is going to need a lot of bed rest, it's going to take time for her wounds to heal." While cuddling with the two, he remarked, "Yeah, I bet. So, would you mind telling me how you know her?" Nemu remarked, "She comes from the same place we do." "And is she a good friend?" Naruto smiled and said, "I see." Isane smiled as she said, "Yes, she is a close friend." When Naruto said, "Well, that's good enough for me," he smiled. "Any friends of yours are welcome in my home." Before kissing him, Isane said, "I love you." Naruto turned to Nemu and kissed her, saying, "I love you as well, my dear Nemu." He smiled and broke off the kiss, saying, "I love you too." Nemu grinned and flushed as she huddled against him. Naruto relaxed with his two heims and let out a sigh. An inn in Wave Country was where Naneo had spent the night. She had reached a bridge after looking everywhere for Orihime. She was curious as to who this Naruto was and what he had done to earn the title of Great Naruto Bridge. She met a boy named Inari as she was making her way to the opposite side, and he offered to take her to his house so she would have a place to stay at night. She declined right away, but when he asked, she agreed to join him for dinner. She thoroughly enjoyed meeting his family, which included his grandfather Tazuna and mother Tsunami. Everyone enjoyed the meal and had a good time. She was shocked to see a smaller version of the blonde man she had seen with Nemu and Isane in a picture. "Who is this?" she asked, picking up the photo and pointing to the blonde boy. She saw the faces of the whole family light up. When Inari said, "That is Naruto.ni-chan," she smiled. Everyone nodded when she asked, "This is the one the bridge is named after?" "Back then, we were under the thumb of a very evil man named Gato. Naruto and his team came and helped us, and he showed us that no matter what, you have to protect what you love," Tazuna said as he examined the image. That was a man named was Naruto Uzumaki, a genin of Konoha. Back then, he was a hyperactive blonde that loved to wear orange. He was always loud but he never gave up, he tried his hardest to fight for us. He even defeated a group of Rouge.nin working for Gato with the help of his team. But he was the one who inspired us to fight, we will never forget him and what he has done." As she listened to the story, Naneo remarked, "He sounds like a great person." "Yeah, Naruto.ni-chan is the best." Inari replied, "Not only did he save us, he saved the world." "Huh?" Naneo asked, drawing attention to herself. Before his mother struck him in the arm, Inari said bluntly, "Wow, you are out of the loop." She chastised her son, saying, "Be nice." He answered, "Yes ma'am." Naneo grinned. "It's fine, I am not from here, so any information you can give me is much appreciated," she said, grinning as she glanced at the two. Inari grinned and continued, "Well, the fourth great ninja war happened a few years ago and he ended it. He fought against the bad man who started it and killed him." As she listened, Naneo mentally noted that she needed to learn more about the history of this world. Before she returned to her room at the inn, they spent the majority of the night talking. She pondered what this world's inhabitants had endured. She was familiar with the sense of a war coming to an end, but not a significant one. The war they were discussing was not merely a big battle, it was a real one. As she lay down to sleep, she thought, "I need to find out more." However, she then remembered to contact the Soul Society. She grabbed the tracking badge and activated the communicator by inserting some of her Riastsa into it. She waited for a response after saying, "Nemu Isane reporting in." Mayuri's voice came through the badge, "Ah, Lieutenant Isane, I was wondering why you reporting in early." "What do you mean, sir?" She responded, "It's been 3 days since my last report." Mayuri answered, "No, it has been 1. Nemu exclaimed in disbelief, "That is not possible. All worlds should line up on the same timeline." After a brief period of silence, Mayuri said, "It seems that the world you are in moves 3 times faster than ours." Nemu answered, "So 3 days here is only a day there." "Yes, it seems," Mayuri responded, "and the others had been there for over a month." Nemu reflected, "So they have been here for 3 months." Before disconnecting the connection, Mayuri stated, "I would advise you to find them and bring them back before they become any more involved in the world." As she gradually allowed sleep to take over, she told herself, "I'll be there soon." Naruto yawned as he awoke. They relaxed and chatted for the remainder of the day after Isane had checked on their guest. Grinning, he left his 2 himes to sleep and stood up. He prepared for the day and began preparing breakfast because, in his view, it was always a good way to start the day. As he prepared, Kyuubi called out to him, "Kit. Beta note. Adjusted the items to match my arrangement in a MN and presumed that Naruto wasn't chatting to himself below." "Yes, Kyuubi?" With a silent prayer that he wouldn't do anything perverse, he answered. "I was just curious when you were going to ask those 2 to marry you," Kyuubi said, almost causing Naruto to drop the pan he was holding. Why do you ask?" Naruto said, blushing. "Well, it gives you an excuse to jump their bones," Kyuubi retorted. "You've been with them for a little over 3 months, and it's almost your 21st birthday, so either ask them now or get forced by the council idiot." "I knew you were going to tie something perverted into this," he yelled back at Kyuubi. "Hey, I'm not," Kyuubi retorted, "I'm just saying that you have the right to jump their bones carelessly once you're married." Although Kyuubi had a point, Naruto remarked, "You really need to stop telling me stuff like that." He ought to ask them, but he was clueless about how to proceed. "All you have to do, Kit, is get a ring, approach them, and say, 'Marry me so I can jump your bones.'" Kyuubi smiled as he said this. With his head slamming into the counter, Naruto uttered, "That will get me killed, you idiot fox." "It worked for me," Kyuubi shrugged in response. While Kyuubi nodded in agreement, Naruto remarked, "Perhaps that is because you are among the most powerful things in the world." "Very true. I am awesome that way," Kyuubi remarked. "Why am I speaking to you once more?" Naruto asked. "Easy. My cheerful disposition," Kyuubi retorted mockingly. Naruto said, "Yeah, that's exactly it," and disconnected. He shook his head and sighed. The foolish fox was right. He was prepared to live his entire life with them because he truly loved them. It seemed appropriate, but many would argue that they would be moving too quickly. Why must life be so difficult? As he finished his breakfast, he thought to himself. After preparing a plate for their visitor, he went to check on her. As the sun shone on her face, Orihime opened her eyes slowly. She sat up and glanced around, wondering where Isane was because it was morning and very quiet. Her thoughts were abruptly interrupted when Naruto emerged from the ramen shop and the door opened. He brought in a tray of breakfast food and placed it on her nightstand, asking her, "Hey, how you feeling?" She looked at him and said, "I'm doing fine. What brings you here?" As Orihime gave him a startled look, he asked, "Can't I check on the girl I rescued?" She exclaimed incredulously, "You're the one who saved me." He smiled as he said, "Yeah, that was me. I have to say, I was surprised to see you traveling on the road by yourself." "I wasn't traveling by myself," she responded. "I had a friend with me, but we got separated when we were attacked." With a comforting smile, Naruto said, "Well, that's too bad. I hope your friend is okay. Now, are you hungry?" Naruto placed the tray in front of Orihime after she nodded. Her arm began to ache as she raised her hand to eat, so she put it down again. When Naruto saw how uncomfortable she was, he scowled. When he asked, "Do you need help?" she gave a forceful shake of her head and attempted to raise her arm once more, but the pain returned. Naruto decided that this was unacceptable and gently placed his hand on her arm, forcing her to put it down again. "It's okay, I'll help." Naruto picked up a pair of chopsticks, grabbed some rice, blew on it, and held it to her mouth while Orihime nodded. This made Orihime flush. Aside from her brother, she had never been fed by a man. She confused Naruto by refusing to take the bite. In an attempt to reassure her, he said, "It's good." He grabbed the rice, ate it, then got more and offered it to her. Because eating the food would result in an indirect kiss with him, this made her blush even more. Naruto wondered what was wrong as she flushed. Placing his hand on her forehead, he took a temperature reading. He asked, "Are you okay?" which made her blush even more. She muttered, "I'm fine." Naruto nodded. He lifted the food for her to eat again and said, "If you say so." She took a bite, flushed, and flushed again. Naruto simply grinned and carried on feeding her. Nanao strolled slowly in the direction of Konoha. Before leaving for her destination, she had been in Wave Country for a few days. She was aware that the world was a violent place, having learned a great deal about recent events. A huge wooden wall appeared to expand in the distance as she moved. Its size and intimidating nature astounded her. It gave the Seireiti's wall the appearance of a fence. Two bored-looking men wearing headbands were waiting at the gate as she got closer. Her hand hovered close to her Zanpakuto as she proceeded in their direction. When she arrived at the gate, the two guards stopped her. One of them said, looking bored, "State your business." He did, however, take note of her sword. "I am here to visit the village." Nanao replied, "I come from the Wave and was told that Konoha was a good place to visit." After nodding in agreement with her account, the guard handed her a clipboard and said, "Just sign your name Haria and welcome to Konoha." As Nanao entered the village, she was once again astounded by its size and said, "Thank you." It matched or exceeded the size of the Seireiti. As she strolled through the streets, she observed the bustling residents, who appeared to be a mix of military and civilians. She observed people hopping along the rooftops and strolling down the streets. She wondered how she managed to do that without falling off, but she focused on the work at hand. She said, "Let's see if I can get any info," and proceeded to the closest eatery. She went in and took a seat, scanning the area and beginning to plan. She was unaware of Isane and Nemu passing by the entire time. After finishing her meal, she made her way to a hotel in the area. She hoped her friend Orihime was okay as she lay down to sleep. As Isane examined her bandages, Orihime sat on her bed and observed Isane's work. She noticed something odd about the tall, silver-haired girl. She said, "Uma Isane?" to get her attention. She put a new bandage on her arm and said, "Yes, Orihime." She said, "You seem different," which surprised her. Isane asked, "What do you mean?" as she gave her a slightly perplexed look. "I mean, it seems like you're happier than you were in Soul Society," Orihime said after struggling to form the words and failing. After a brief moment of reflection and the thought of Naruto, Isane blushed and said, "I guess I am." "That's nice," Orihime said, laying down. "What caused it?" After a few moments of silence, Isane exclaimed, "I found something I have been missing here." Orihime saw Nemu enter the room before she could ask. Orihime noticed that the other girl was also glowing when she turned to face her. She had never seen Nemu smile before, so it was a new idea to her, so she was shocked. Nemu turned her head sideways in astonishment as she saw Orihime staring at her. Orihime blushed in shame as she asked, "Is there something on my face?" "It's just I've never seen your smile," Orihime replied with a sheepish smile. As though stating a fact, the orange-haired girl said, "I have smiled before." Nemu glanced at her with some bewilderment. "That's not what I meant," Orihime replied. "I mean, I've never seen you really smile." Thinking of the one who made her smile, Nemu nodded and grinned. Her response was, "I guess not." "Well, I just came to inform you that you were well enough to eat with us at the table, so if you would follow Isane she will lead you to the dining room." Nemu departed after Orihime nodded. Isane quickly assisted her in descending the stairs to the dining room while supporting her. She saw Naruto setting the table with food as they arrived at the bottom of the stairs. She was astounded by the abundance of food and pondered the identity of the chef. Naruto grinned as soon as everyone was seated. He began to fill his plate and said, "Let's eat." Isane filled Orihime's plate with food and assisted her. She was met with a mouth-watering taste that sent shivers down her spine as she took a bite. She exclaimed, "This tastes great," which caused Naruto to smile. He smiled and said, "It's always nice to hear someone praise my cooking. I'm glad you like it." Orihime asked, "You cooked this?" as she gave him a startled look. He smiled and said, "Of course. Is that such a surprise?" "I only know one guy who can do anything like this, but he sews," she said sheepishly. "Well, that is a good skill to have," Naruto replied. "It makes it easier to fix clothes and not having to buy new ones." She smiled and said, "That is very true, but it was still a surprise when I found out." Before long, there was a relaxed silence on the other side of the table. "Well, I am just glad you like it." Observing everyone at the table, Orihime saw how Isane and Nemu became more animated when conversing with Naruto. Naruto was the reason behind something that happened while they were here, but she was unable to pinpoint it. She made the decision to find out as soon as possible. Later that evening, before going to bed, Isane checked her bandages while Orihime sat on her bed. She was unable to find the right words to ask what was happening between Isane and their mutual host. Observing her uneasiness, Isane made the decision to investigate. "Is there something wrong, Orihime?" she asked, smiling at the girl. When Orihime was jolted out of her reverie, she shook her head and said, "No, it's nothing." Orihime was clearly bothered by something, and Isane refused to accept. "No, there is something wrong," she said, "but it's okay, you can tell me." Isane smiled as she said, "I was just wondering what happened when you arrived here." "It was okay to ask," she replied with a grin. "It started out simple enough. We exited the Senkaimon and headed toward the nearest town. We learned that we could be seen and touched by all the people here. Honestly, it was quite a surprise. Anyway, we camped when we were ambushed by some missing nin. I woke up in their tent tied up and helpless, but Naruto came and saved me and Nemu. We've been here in Konoha since then." Orihime was delighted that Naruto was available to assist and was astounded by the story. She also observed that she would blush a little and smile when Isane spoke about him. This gave her peace of mind that something was going on between her and him. Orihime inquired, "So what have you been doing since you got here?" "He taught us about this world and its powers. They use an energy called chakra and I have been learning how to use it. It is amazing what you can do with it. You can control many of the elements with it, but most people are in tune with one or two of them." Isane paused for a moment before responding. "He has been training me in water manipulation and Nemu in earth manipulation." She smiled at her training. "We have been training him in Ryotsu. He picked it up fairly quickly and can perform many different Kido. He is a really amazing person." Orihime observed Isane blushing and remarked, "You are really fond of him, aren't you?" Nodding and grinning, Isane remarked, "He is truly one of a kind." She let the girl sleep after saying good night to Orihime. Orihime sighed and lay back on her pillow. She soon fell asleep, but not before her thoughts strayed to the blonde who had come to her rescue. Nervously, Naruto stood in front of a jewelry store and peered at it. What did I anticipate doing? As Naruto gazed at the shop, he thought to himself. Several people shook their heads when they saw him standing there. Although he was a ninja and could kill someone in at least 50 different ways, he had no idea what to do with the stuff of the heart. Kyuubi couldn't help but shake his head as he observed his jailer. He truly doesn't know what to do, he thought. "Hey Kit." "Yes, Fox?" Naruto sighed as he heard the fox. "Just pick a ring and stop there," he said. "I can't just pick a random ring and give it to them," Naruto sighed, adding that it must have some significance. "Who was the fool who said that to you?" Kyuubi inquired as to when he received that counsel. Ka-san told me. Naruto answered, "When I asked, you were taking your 5th daily nap." "What did she say?" Kyuubi inquired. Rewind with a hint of fear, Naruto approached Tsunade's office slowly. He intended to inform her that he would ask Nemu and Isane to marry him. He was more afraid that she would reject his proposal and tell him that it was too soon, but if she did, he would have to marry someone the damn council picked. He contemplated buying the rings and telling her later as he stood outside the door, but he knew she would kill him for it. Shizune wondered what had her younger brother so agitated as she watched him stand motionless in front of the door. He jumped when she touched his shoulder, then turned to face her, his face as white as a ghost. He simply nodded when she asked, "Are you okay?" He simply nodded when I asked again, "Are you sure?" She let out a sigh. He simply nodded once more when I asked, "My hair is on fire, isn't it?" "Naruto," she exclaimed, waking him from his reverie. He shook his head and said, "Huh, what did you say?" Shizune gave him a worried glance and asked, "What's wrong?" Shizune squealed with delight as Naruto leaned against the wall and sighed, saying, "I wanted to ask Nemu and Isane to marry me." "I am so happy for you," she exclaimed, beaming broadly, as she gathered him into a tight embrace. As she released him, he said, "Thanks Shizune. I just need to tell Ka-san." She encouraged him, saying, "It will be fine. Just go in and tell her." Shizune sighed as he said, "It's harder than it seems." She hurriedly pushed him inside after opening the door. When Naruto staggered into the office, Tsunade gave him a funny look. She asked, "Naruto, what's wrong?" As he simply stood there without making eye contact, she knew something wasn't right when she noticed that he was averting her eyes. "You didn't get one of them pregnant, did you?" she inquired. "Because if you did, I will support you with all my might, but you're going to have to take responsibility for it." "What? No," he exclaimed rapidly as he recovered from staring at her with his mouth agape. "It's not that." "Then what is it?" she asked, glaring at him. He said, "I wanted to let you know I was Auma, before you disappeared." Tsunade yelled, "Spit it out," at him. "I was going to tell you that I am going to ask Nemu and Isane to marry me," he replied. Tsunade gave him a startled look. She asked slowly, "You are doing what?" Which caused Naruto to back off in terror. He waited for a fist to strike his face before feeling himself drawn into an embrace. "I am going to propose to Nemu and Isane." She exclaimed joyfully, "I'm going to have grand babies at last." "Wait, what?" he asked, bewildered. After correcting herself, she said, "I mean, I am so happy for you." He smiled and said, "I'm glad you are." He shook her head when she asked, "So tell me, have you gotten the rings yet?" Flashback's conclusion. The fox nodded when he said, "Then she told me to make each ring special." "Well, that's hard to argue with," Kyuubi said. Naruto smiled and said, "Yeah, it is." The fox said, "Well, Kit, go in there and get them." Naruto simply nodded and grinned as he entered the store. With 2 tiny boxes in his pockets, Naruto left the store. He finally found the rings for the girls after a long search. Isane received a gold band with a blue stone, while Nemu received a silver band with a purple stone. The rings were securely in his pocket, and he grinned. All he needed to do now was wait for the right opportunity to ask them. As he walked, he asked himself, "How should I do it?" He saw someone pass in front of him as he was walking. He tried to sidestep the individual, but they swerved straight into him. The person fell, but Naruto stumbled. When he caught them, he saw that it was a stunning girl wearing glasses and having her black hair tied back, asking, "Are you okay?" She nodded and looked up at him. "I'm fine," she said, and he assisted her in standing up. Naruto smiled at her and said, "That's good," he said, "have a great day," and turned to leave. "He is the one," the girl told herself, smiling, as she followed him after briefly watching him go. She had taken a step toward locating her friends. In the barbecue restaurant, Naruto waited for his friends at a table. He had asked them for assistance with a problem he was having by sending clones to them. In the hopes of seeing his friends soon, he sat there waiting. At last, Shikamaru appeared. He sat down and appeared to be his typical bored self. He was sitting across from Naruto when he asked, "What's this problem you're having?" With a shake of his head, Naruto said to Shikamaru, "Wait till everyone gets here." Shika said, "Troublesome," and perused the menu. When Choji and Kiba entered, he was ready to place his order. Kiba sat down and asked, "What's up, guys? And what is this problem you're having, Naruto?" Choji asked the same question while glancing at Naruto. "Just wait till Sasuke gets here and I'll tell you," Naruto sighed. Everyone turned when Sasuke said, "Tell them what when I get here." Naruto said, "Hey Sasuke, glad you could make it." After giving his friend a quick glance, Sasuke sat down and said, "This better be good dobi, I was about to ask Sakura out to dinner." Naruto answered, "Trust me, it is." Before he began, he made sure everyone was present. "You all know I am dating Nemu and Isane, correct?" Everyone replied, "Okay, good. Well, I want to ask them to marry me." His friends all exclaimed, "What?" simultaneously. If Naruto didn't cover his ears, he would go deaf. Kiba said, "Dude, you serious?" Sasuke arched an eyebrow. Choji dropped his fork, and Shikamaru gazed at him with his mouth agape. "So you're going to ask them to marry you?" Sasuke responded, "And you called us why?" "I need help planning on how to ask them." Naruto shook his head, looking at Sasuke. "I was thinking that if we put our heads together, we can come up with something pretty good." "We, or at least I, don't know the first thing about this crap." Kiba responded, "If it was how to kill someone and make it look like an accident, yeah, we can help easy, but this is actually difficult." Shikamaru sighed and said, "Yeah, this is too troublesome." Choji remarked, "I have to agree with Shika on this one." "Come on guys. We can do this." Naruto replied, "It can't be that hard." After letting out a sigh and shaking his head, Sasuke said, "Let's call in some backup." He called forth a small raven and instructed it to locate Sakura and the girls. Following its nod, the raven took off, saying, "There, all we have to do is wait." Naruto turned as the ground began to tremble and saw Sakura, Ino, Hinata, and Tenten charging in the direction of the eatery. Sakura gasped, "Naruto is going to do what?" Sasuke said languidly, "Ask him, my job is over." Sakura sat down, turned to face Naruto, and asked, "What's the problem, Naruto?" After blushing, Naruto turned his head away and said, "I was going to propose to Nemu and Isane." After a brief period of silence, Sakura pulled him into a bone-crushing embrace and said, "I am so happy for you." Naruto was making a lot of effort to breathe. After telling her, Sakura stopped squeezing, "He's going to die," Sasuke released Naruto. Naruto gasped for air for the next minute or two. She smiled sheepishly and said, "Sorry." Naruto waved it away. "I need help figuring out a way to ask them," he sighed, adding, "But it's fine." When Ino said, Then you are asking the right people, she smiled. Naruto nodded, but his face turned somewhat pale when he noticed the girl's smiles. He whispered to Sasuke, I'm going to regret asking them, aren't I? But Sasuke remained silent. The girls turned back to the blonde after huddled together. Here's what you do first. Naruto's expression was stunned as he entered the house. For an hour, the girls went into great detail about what Naruto needed to do in order to make the ideal proposal. He made notes about where to go, what to wear, and where to pop the question. All of the girls agreed with Naruto's choice of location. Thus, all he had to do was prepare everything else. To make the reservations and obtain the other items he required, he made a few clones and dispatched them. He remembered Orihime as he made his way to his room. He went to her room, knocked, and waited for her to respond because he was curious about how she was doing. He heard her say, come in, and entered. Orihime grinned and expressed gratitude for the small companionship. Izan advised her to rest in her room even though she was largely recovered. He said to her, hey, how are you doing today? She sighed slightly as she said, I'm fine, but I wish I could get out of the room. Naruto nodded in agreement. He, too, detested being cooped up. Orihime grinned as he said, maybe you can help me with something. An idea suddenly came to him. She exclaimed with excitement, really? What is it? Naruto showed Orihime the rings after taking them out. Do you think Nemu and Izan will like these? Asked he. She gazed at the rings and remarked, they would love them. Although she was in awe of the stone's size and craftsmanship, she couldn't help but wonder why he was purchasing rings for them. After giving it some thought, she chose to inquire, what are the rings for? She blushed, but it quickly disappeared, as Naruto smiled and gestured for her to lean in before saying, I'm going to propose. Really? Orihime asked. Propose? Yes, Naruto exclaimed, beaming broadly, my life has been so much better since I met them. Izan and Nemu liked Naruto, but Orihime wasn't sure if they loved him, so she started to see why they weren't the same. She questioned, are you sure it is the right time? Naruto sat down beside her and nodded, saying, yeah, I am. When we first met, I don't know why, but I was drawn to them. At first we were just friends, but something changed along the way. They just found a place in my heart that no one could fill. Orihime paid attention and was taken aback by his discussion of Nemu and Izan. He wanted to live out the rest of his days with them because he truly loved them. However, she was concerned that once Naneo discovered them, they would have to depart. She smiled and said, well, congratulations, but she was secretly concerned about what lay ahead. Naruto unexpectedly showed up while Nemu was seated at the table and Izan was in the kitchen doing the dishes. He smiled and said, hello my angels. The two of them flushed. How are you this fine day? Nemu asked, very well, and yourself? And Naruto grinned. He exclaimed, great, just great. He took a seat beside Nemu and drew her into his lap, very happy. Well, that's good. Nemu replied, what is making you so happy? She pouted a little when he said, that, my dear, is a secret. She smiled at him, blushing, you're cute when you pout. She teased him, saying, well, if I'm cute when I pout, before kissing him, what am I know? She asked. He kissed her and said, a goddess. At last, Izan emerged from the kitchen and took a seat beside Naruto. He grinned as she cuddled up close. My goddesses, he replied, what would my life be like without you? Nemu nodded in agreement as Izan stated, I'd rather not know. Agreed. Naruto replied, so ladies, I was wondering if you would join me for a night out tonight? According to Izan, I'd love to. Nemu answered, same here. Great, Naruto grinned and rose, much to the dismay of the two. He waved to them before vanishing in a whirlpool of leaves, saying, we will live at 7, dress is formal. I will see you in a few. Nemu asked, what does he have planned? But she grinned. All she knew was that this would be a memorable evening. Later, while waiting for his dates, Naruto sat on the couch. He had on a black suit, black tie, and an orange shirt. He couldn't wait any longer and had the rings in his pocket. Although he was a little anxious, he was certain that they were the right girls for him. He turned as soon as he heard footsteps and saw Nemu coming down the steps. She accessorized her black dress with a purple choker around her neck and matching high heels. She grinned at Naruto, who was unable to take his eyes off the beauty in front of him. She said, hello Naruto. Naruto grinned. He took her hand and said, hello Nemu. You're looking lovely. He kissed her hand, causing her to flush. She glanced at him and said, thank you, you don't look half bad yourself. With a sly smile, he remarked, well I clean up well. Izan was standing at the top of the stairs when they heard a voice say, hello you two. She was dressed in a blue dress that fit her figure nicely. Grinning, she descended the stairs. She shut Naruto's mouth, which had been open the entire time. Naruto simply nodded in agreement as she said, "I'll take that as a compliment." He smiled as he jolted out of his daze and led them out of the house. "Shall we, ladies?" he asked. They had a wonderful dinner after he took them to a nice restaurant in town. They laughed, chatted, and enjoyed themselves immensely. They were unaware that they were being followed. When they arrived in the restaurant area, Nanao had noticed them. She watched the three of them as they entered. She watched them laugh and asked, "What is he up to?" She wondered what the man had said because she had never seen Nemu laugh before. Before long, the meal was finished, and they left the restaurant. With the girls and Naruto. "That was fun," Nemu grinned. "We need to do this more often." He grinned, "I am glad you like it," and continued, "We will be doing this more often, now come on. We have one last place to go before heading home." With Isane's, "All right," they made their way to the Hokage monument. They strolled in silence, and it appeared that Naruto was growing anxious with each stride. As they arrived at the summit, he guided them to the fourth Hokage head and turned to face the two women. "Nemu Isane," he said, struggling to complete the sentence. "When we first met, I thought I was just helping you. Over time, as I have gotten to know each of you, I couldn't help but feel as if I found what I thought I would never find. You gave me love that I thought I would never receive." He paused for a moment. "I cannot picture my life without each of you. I tried the last couple of days and I can't. I think it is impossible." "Well, I am glad you think that." Nemu laughed and smiled, adding, "I feel the same." Izan grinned at him. "Before I met you I thought I'd never fall in love," she stated, "but when I did, I couldn't believe I found someone who made me feel this way. Just hearing both of you say that makes me even more sure that I want to do this," he roared. "Nemu Isane, I can't live my life without you, so would you do me the honor of being my wives?" he said, kneeling with a ring box in each hand. Nemu exclaimed, "Of course I will," and placed the ring on her finger, shocked because she had never anticipated this but already knowing the answer. With more happiness than she had ever experienced in her life, Izan gazed at Naruto, unsure of what to say. However, she feared that they would have to depart if the Soul Society sent someone to pursue them. She looked into Naruto's deep blue eyes and stammered, "Iya." She believed that she would never be able to live without seeing those eyes again. She said, "Yes," and accepted the ring. Izan returned the passionate kiss, and Naruto grinned as he pulled her in. He turned to Nemu and gave her the same passionate kiss that he gave Izan. A voice said, "Hado number 4 Byakurai." Naruto was launched off the Hokage monument after a flash of pale light struck him in the chest. Nemu exclaimed, "Naruto," and turned to see Nanao standing there, pointing with her fingers in Naruto's direction. "I'm so glad I found you," she replied. "Come on, we have to go home." With tears in her eyes, Nemu sprinted over to Nanao and seized her by the collar. "Why?" she cried, and Nanao gave her a startled look. Nemu was crying now, something she had never seen her do before. Nanao said, releasing her hold, "Because you need to go back to the Soul Society." Nemu yelled, "I don't want to go back. I am happy here, I am not going back." After giving Nemu a quick glance, Nanao shook her head and remarked, "You have been here too long. Tanma Otoshi. Time. Out drop," was her Shunpyo'd statement as she fell behind Nemu. While Insane stood motionless, staring at the location where Naruto had been, Nemu collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Seeing this, Nanao cast the same spell on Izan. After gathering up the two lieutenants, she made her way to the gates. With Naruto wondering what had happened, Naruto plummeted to the ground. He was shot off the cliff after spending one moment with his fiancée copyright S. He glanced at the rapidly approaching ground. He made his favorite hand gestures as he turned. Naruto exclaimed, "Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," and 100 clones materialized to cushion his fall. He got to his feet as he landed, wondering what was happening. He returned to the summit of the Hokage monument at full speed. When he got to the top, he yelled, "Nemu," but she wasn't there. "Isane," he called, but he received no answer. Damn. He was furious and was going to make whoever took his girls pay, so Naruto took off running, made 2 clones before he left so they could enter Sage mode, and then ran back to his house and changed into his gear. With Nanao after arriving at the gate, she made sure Nemu and Izan were still unconscious and set them down when she came to a clearing, but not before tying them up and touching her lieutenant's badge before waiting for the call. "Yes, Lieutenant?" Nanao grinned as Mayuri spoke. "I have located Lieutenants Katetsu and Kuretsuchi," she said. "Awaiting gate back to the Soul Society as soon as possible." "One moment, Lieutenant," Mayuri replied. "It will take at least 15 minutes to get the gate ready and to your position." She said, "Understood, sir." Did you locate Inoue? He inquired. She said sadly, unfortunately not, sir. After a brief period of silence, he said, your top priority right now is to make sure you get the lieutenants back safely. We will have to come back for her. She waited for the gate after saying, yes sir. With Mayuri he turned the cameras to Naneo's location and called the other captains, grinning, they had located them. He returned his attention to the screen after saying, let's make sure nothing bad happens. With Naruto after putting on all his equipment and leaving through the door, Naruto instantly felt the memories of his clone and closed his eyes, which were now orange with an orange tint around them. He then closed his eyes and felt the chakra from everyone around him, searching for Nemu's and Isane's chakra signatures, which he soon located 2 miles outside the gates. He said, I am coming for you my loves, and started running toward the location at full speed. With Naneo when she checked her watch and saw that the Senkaimon was about to open in 5 minutes, Naneo felt a powerful presence approaching her. She stood up and drew her sword, then looked around when an orange blur flew out of the trees and landed in front of Nemu and Isane. Naneo gazed at her 2 friends and wondered what had caused such a drastic change in them. The reaction she received from Nemu was shocking. What on earth are you? She uttered those words. The man gave her a furious look, and she knew that he was the one she had struck with the Kido. He should have been dead. With anger in his voice, he demanded, who are you and what are you doing with Nemu and Isane? I am here to take them back home. She continued, my name is of no importance. He sneered and said, yes it is. What's the reason? She tensed and asked. He said, simple, I need to write it on your tombstone. He charged her, and Naneo pulled out her sword to stab him, but he swatted it away with his bare hand. He then tried to punch her in the face, but she ducked, and then something struck her in the face. She jumped back, but he wouldn't let her escape, and he punched her again, and she flew away. What is he doing? She thought as she got up only to roll away from a heel drop. She jumped up and put her hands together, Hado number 31 Shakuho. Naneo flew across the forest and landed in another clearing. She got up slowly, looked around, and saw that Naruto was speeding towards her, so she prepared another Kido. Sanzai Suru, Kimono no Hon, she exclaimed, shocked that he didn't appear to be hurt by the attack, and fired another at him, only to have the same effect. Kasha, Katetsu no Sharin, Senta. Tomariba Sora, Ugokeba Kaze. Number 63 Raikoho Nero ga Kaya ni Machiru Hado, she said, and a bolt of yellow lightning shot in his direction. The blast's force sent him flying back, and he landed and created a crater. She thought she had him, and as the dust settled, she saw him standing there, looking fine, with only a small patch of blood on the top of his forehead as evidence that the attack had been successful. Who is he? As he approached her, she thought, his orange eyes narrowed at her. He charged forward, saying, that won't work on me. He attempted to punch her, but she ducked and was thrown back a few feet by the force of the blow, but her assailant was not finished. He proceeded to make some hand signals and inhaled air. Futon. Dai Tapa. Naneo got up and drew her sword, but he dodged her charge and kicked her hard in the side, sending her flying. She struggled to get up and turned to face her assailant. He shouted and shouted a large ball of wind at Naneo. The attack hit and she was sent back and hit a tree hard. He charged forward intending to end the fight. She tried to get some distance, thinking, he is good, but he wouldn't have it. He came in front of her and punched her in the face, causing her to skid across the ground and land a few feet away. She slowly stood up and turned to face her assailant, who formed a spinning ball of blue in his hand and said, time to die. She then got up and shun-PO'd away, watching as the attack struck the area she had just been in and easily destroyed it. She walked away after saying, note to self.do not get hit with that. He made a cross with his hands and grinned, saying, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 clones of him materialized beside him. Naneo initially believed them to be illusions, similar to those she had witnessed Soy Fawn employ, but she realized they were real when one of them touched her stomach and she felt his fist make contact. After she flew back, she was caught by another clone, who punched her, sending her flying a few feet away. Before long, all 4 clones were close to her. Naruto Renden appeared above her, and the original struck her with a spinning heel drop after the clones yelled, "You! Zu! Ma! Ki!" and kicked her into the air. When Naneo tried to get up, she was kicked in the face, flew back, and was knocked into another clone. She soon turned into a human pinball between the 4 clones, but the original caught her and brought her to his eyes. She hit the ground so hard that she created a crater, and blood was streaming from her mouth. But I think some time with the T&I department will do you some good, he said angrily, adding, I should kill you right now. As he struck her in the face, causing her to lose consciousness, she stared at him in terror. After giving the girl a quick glance, Naruto gave her to his clones and said, "Take her to Ka-san. She'll be aware of what to do." "Got it, boss." He hurried off in the direction of Konoha. Naruto turned and ran back toward Nemu and Isane after watching the clone vanish into the trees. He arrived there swiftly, untied them, and held them in his arms while he waited for them to awaken. A bit later, after remembering that Nanao had knocked her unconscious, Nemu opened her eyes slowly and looked around, expecting to see her father sneering at her, but instead she saw Naruto. Nemu began to cry as he said, "Morning beautiful." She stood up and embraced him. She refused to let him go, saying, "I thought you were dead." "It would take more than falling off a cliff to take me out," Naruto said, grinning and stroking her hair. "Promise me you won't leave me." Nemu grinned and nestled into his chest. He lifted her chin and said, "I promise. And that is a promise of a lifetime." He smiled and gave her a very tender kiss, and Nemu returned the kiss while crying joyfully. Izane slowly woke up and saw Naruto kissing Nemu, so she tackled him to the ground. She hugged him and said, "Don't worry me like that." He kissed her and smiled slightly. Holding her close, Naruto apologized before getting up and waving his hands at the girls, saying, "Come on, let's go home." In the Society of Souls, while watching the view screen in the 12th barracks, the captains noticed that Nanao was waiting for the Senkimon when someone suddenly leapt out of the trees, said something, and then tried to punch her. She managed to dodge, but it appeared that something hit her. They watched as he beat her as if she was just a trainee, and they were even more shocked that he made solid clones of himself. They watched as he knocked her out and handed him to one of his clones, and then he vanished into the trees at incredible speeds. Shunsui watched his lieutenant lose, and he said, "Oh no." According to Mayuri, this is most troubling. According to Captain Soy.Fon, we need to do something. According to the head captain, I agree with Captain Soy.Fon, and we must retrieve the lieutenants. Byakuya responded, "Yes, but this time we must send at least a captain." Everyone nodded and left the area until only Captain Unohana remained, who had taken over the camera and had followed him. He untied their bonds and held them close to him, and when Nemu woke up first, she hugged him tightly. He smiled and said something, then kissed her, and Unohana watched in disbelief as Nemu appeared to be responding. Izane then woke up, and she tackled the man to the ground. He kissed her, then held her in his arms, and they remained like that until they got up and vanished in a flash. When she realized that this had been recorded, she paused to watch the screen and said, "Oh dear." She then took the recording to show the head captain. With Nanao with a groan, Nanao opened her eyes and saw that she was in some kind of office, surrounded by people wearing animal masks, all of whom were carrying multiple weapons. When she attempted to move, she discovered that her hands and feet were bound, and that there was a tag on her chest that appeared to be suppressing her abilities. "What's going on?" she asked herself. A voice in front of her said, "Good, you're awake." The woman behind the desk was a stunning woman with brown eyes, blonde hair, and a blue diamond on her head. Her name was Tsunade Senju, Godem Hokage. "Could you now explain your attack on my son and his fiancé copyright S?" "Fiancé copyright S?" Nanao asked, but she realized she was going to have a difficult time after glancing at Tsunade. This is not going to end well. The lieutenants must be retrieved immediately. As he stood in front of the other captains, Captain Hitsugaya declared, "What we have seen is sufficient evidence. I feel it would be best to err on the side of caution with this matter." Captain Kuchiki continued, "We do not the circumstances that lead to the attack. Yes, getting the lieutenants back is a priority, but can we also capture the young man for further study?" Captain Kuratsuchi laughed and replied, "It could prove fruitful in our fight against the Hollows." Captain Hitsuguya told Mayuri, "This is no time for your little experiments, because it was your experiments that initially caused this mess." Mayuri remained silent while glancing at the youthful captain. Observing that Captain Unohana was absent during their battle, Soy.Fon said, "I think it in our best interest to investigate this matter and to see what situations the lieutenants are in." She made the decision to investigate this later. Byakuya responded, "That is the logical course of action," and nodded to his fellow captain. After hearing what his fellow captains had to say, the head captain nodded and said, "I agree with Captains Kuchiki and Soy. Fon. We will look into the issues in this world before we take any hasty action. Dismissed, we don't want to start a war. This is a problem we cannot afford to leave alone. If they are a threat, we must be able to combat it to the best of our abilities." Head Captain Yamamoto sighed as everyone left the office, but he was interrupted when Captain Unohana showed up. "There is something you need to see," she said urgently, "Head Captain." "Yes, what is it?" he said, and Unohana played the recording. Yamamoto watched in disbelief as Nemu and Izane kissed the young man. Unohana then turned to the captain and said, "Head Captain, We need to exercise caution because this is a delicate situation. To reclaim those two, I believe the young man pursued and battled Lieutenant Eyes. He turned to face Hana and remarked, "This is really concerning. Has anyone else noticed this?" She said, "No sir." He raised his eyebrows, "Then it shall only be shown to those whom head to this world." He continued, "This is in hopes they can understand the situation." She bowed and said, "Yes sir." After taking the recording, she left the office and Yamamoto watched, knowing that the recording was secure but also realizing that the situation had become much more challenging. In the office of the Hokage, Nanao asked, "What do you mean Fionka copyright S?" with concern in her eyes, but Tsunade chose to ignore her. Suande demanded, again, "Who are you?" But Nanao said nothing. "Okay, if you don't want to talk to me, I just let Anko loosen your lips," Suande said, glancing at her. Nanao turned and asked, "Anko?" She was wearing a trench coat over a mesh shirt and a short skirt, and her purple hair was tied back. With a crazy expression on her face, Anko asked, "Do I get a new plaything?" "Yes Anko, but we need her alive." Suande nodded, adding, "I want to learn all about her and where she comes from." Nanao knew she was going to have a long night after looking at Anko. The following morning Nemu awoke and surveyed the area. She grinned when she noticed Naruto lying beside her. She had not been returned to the Soul Society. She was still with him. He drew her in as she leaned into the blonde. Grinning, she put her arms around him and refused to let go. Before Naruto started to wake up, they remained in this state for a few minutes. He grinned as he opened his eyes. Gazing into her eyes, he said, "Morning, Nemu." She embraced Naruto and said, "Morning, Naruto." Naruto encircled her with his arms, drawing her nearer. He intended to make anyone who attempted to take her or Izan away pay a heavy price after last night. A frown came over his face as he considered his assailant. Although she wasn't used to fighting a shinobi, she had employed the same techniques as Nemu and Izan. At last, they climbed out of bed and went downstairs. Izan had prepared breakfast and was already awake. She had retrieved Orihime from upstairs and carried her downstairs. They all ate in silence while seated at the table. The tense atmosphere made Orihime wonder what had transpired the previous evening. When she came to wake Izan, she saw that she had a ring on her finger, and she also saw one on Nemu's hand. The proposal appeared to go smoothly, but something else occurred. She said, "So how was your night?" and everyone tensed up for a second. Izan said, "It was wonderful," and she showed Orihime her engagement ring. Naruto proposed. As everyone appeared to calm down, Orihime grinned. Nemu also showed Orihime her ring, and Naruto was beaming broadly. Before long, an Anbu entered, and everyone was chatting and enjoying themselves. Orihime was afraid because she had never seen one before. Seeing this, Izan smiled reassuringly at her. "Uzumaki Sama," said the Anbu, "the assailant has been handed to the I&T department, she being questioned right now." "Good thanks," said Naruto, nodding, "let me know when we have the information." When Naruto stood up, Orihime was perplexed and wondered what was happening. He smiled and said, "I washed the dishes." Orihime knew something was up because she could tell it was forced. Nemu beat her to just as she was about to offer assistance. Izan and Orihime remained in the dining room as the two departed. After a few minutes of silence, Orihime turned to face Izan and inquired, "What happened last night?" Izan glanced at the child. "After Naruto proposed, we were attacked by Nanao." She continued, "She took us somewhere and tried to take us back to the Soul Society. Naruto found us before she could and fought her. She was handed over to the authorities." Orihime said, "Nanao is here," with a slight smile that Izan noticed. Orihime nodded when Izan asked, "You were sent with her to retrieve us, weren't you?" With a blank expression on her face, Izan said, "I won't tell Naruto, but I think it would be better if you wouldn't try anything." Orihime nodded and watched as Izan left her alone with her thoughts and went to the kitchen. Alongside Naruto and Nemu and Naruto quietly cleaned the dishes. Nemu had been thinking about a few things they had discussed for some time. "Naruto," she said at last, capturing his interest. "Yes, Nemu?" he asked, putting away a dish. "What is the I&T department?" After a brief period of silence, Naruto said, "It stands for Interrogation and Torture Department." This caused Nemu to scowl. She answered, "I was afraid you were going to say that." Naruto turned to face her, his expression bewildered. "Why is that a bad thing?" he asked, his voice tinged with rage. Nemu remained silent until she finally said, "I know her." Looking at her, Naruto remarked, "So, she attacked me and kidnapped you. I think she's right where she needs to be." Nemu saw the fear and rage in his eyes as she gazed at him. She looked into his eyes and raised a hand to his cheek. She should be hurt for following orders. He inquired. Whose orders? Naruto stared at Nemu, waiting for a response, but she remained silent. He shook his head in exasperation as she continued to say nothing. He put down the plate he was holding and turned to face her. He said, whatever you were hiding, I would rather hear it from you than to get it out of a stranger, and turned to leave then. He left her alone in the kitchen while Nemu watched. She was aware that she would need to inform him. She might lose the man she loves if she didn't. After completing the dishes, she made her way to the living room. She turned to see Isane walk into the kitchen, her expression bewildered. She had wondered what had happened as she saw Naruto leave with a look of rage in his eyes. She approached Nemu, who was motionless as a statue. Nemu turned to her friend and asked, "What wrong?" Isane gave her a slightly frightened look as she said, "We need to tell him." Nemu nodded as she stammered, Are you sure?" Isane approached Nemu and drew her into an embrace. She noticed Nemu's eyes were filled with fear. Though she knew in her heart that Naruto would embrace them, she experienced the same fear. After releasing the embrace, she turned to face Nemu and said, "Let's go tell him." On the roof sitting, Naruto observed the clouds. He was furious with himself for having doubts about Isane and Nemu. He knew that he would always protect them because he loved them. He saw Nemu and Isane ascend the roof after hearing footsteps. Isane sat down next to him, Nemu on his other side, and said, "Hello." Naruto glanced at her and said, "Hi." He smiled slightly. He nodded when Nemu said, "Naruto, there is something we have to tell you." He focused all of his attention on her. After glancing at him, she inhaled, exhaled, and began. She paused, and he nodded. "As you know, we are not from around the elemental nations," she said. He said, "You come from across the sea." He turned to face Isane, who said, "That is not true. We are not from across the sea, we are not even from this world at all." After giving them a puzzled look, Naruto nodded and asked, "So you are from a different world?" Isane also nodded. "We come from a place called the Soul Society," Isane replied. "There we are what you call Shinigami." After glancing at them, Naruto burst out laughing, leaving them perplexed. Nemu, a little annoyed by his laughter, questioned, "What is so funny?" "We are telling the truth." In an attempt to contain his laughter, Naruto raised his hand. After a few moments, everything faded away. "You can't be Shinigami," he said. "I have met him." Nemu and Isane stared at him in disbelief. "Unless you are wearing a mask with a knife in your mouth and you eat souls, then you're a Shinigami." After hearing the description, Nemu was unable to contain her surprise. As she told herself, that's how the Spirit King is said to look. He must reap the souls here personally. "That impossible," Isane replied. "We are Shinigami, we reap the soul of the dead in our world." Naruto looked at her and replied, "That is in your world." He responded, "This is mine, we only have on Shinigami and he is feared above all else. So unless you eat my soul I'm not buying it." Nemu glanced at him and gave a nod. "Fact aside, where we are from, we are part of the Shinigami forces. 13 squads make up the forces. We discovered your world and were sent to investigate of it." "Why?" he inquired. Nemu explained, "We were here to see if there was any hollow activity and to see if there were any souls that need to be sent to the Soul Society." Naruto gave her a perplexed look. He inquired, "Hollow?" And Isane clarified the distinction between holes and hollows. Naruto nodded in comprehension following the explanation. He stopped making mental connections and said, "Okay, I get that now, so you came here and were attacked. After that I rescued you and you've been here ever since." "That is correct," Nemu replied. "When you found us, we left behind the items that would allow us to go home." He was nodded once more when he said, "So if you had the items you would have gone home after I had found you." He was silent for a while as he gazed at the roof. "So do you want to go back?" Nemu and Isane both said, "No," simultaneously. Their faces showed a hint of bewilderment as Naruto looked up at them. "Why not?" replied the man. "Don't you have family and friends you miss?" Isane said, "Yes, we do." Naruto put his arms around her as tears began to fall from his eyes, but she pulled him into an embrace. "I would rather stay here and be with you." After turning away from them, Nemu said, "I was nothing but an experiment to my father, and I never want to go back." Naruto heard her statement and drew her into an embrace. After a brief period of silence, he said, "Thank you for telling me. I know it's difficult, but I love you both, and I will be damned if I allow them to take you." For a while, the three of them remained in each other's arms. Later, in the office of the Hokage Orihime, Nemu, Isane, and Naruto entered Tsunade's office. Nemu and Isane explained that Orihime was also from their world to Naruto after they had told him everything. When Naruto heard that it was a different part of it but still the same world, he nodded and grinned. They told him everything, which pleased him. To get the report, They were then summoned to the Hokage office. Since this was Orihime's first time leaving the house, she couldn't help but feel anxious, and Konoha seemed a little intimidating. Naruto nodded reassuringly and smiled at her. She relaxed a little as a result. Suande observed as they made their way to the desk and waited for everyone to take a seat. Naruto nodded as she said, "I'm glad you could join us." She glanced at the group and picked up a folder from her desk. "This is all the information we have gotten out of the prisoner." "Anything interesting, Ka-san?" Naruto asked, glancing at Suande as they all nodded. She glanced at Nemu and Izan and said, "Well, a few things. She told us that she was a Shinigami sent to retrieve her fellow officers. I dismissed the Shinigami part, but she seemed to know you too." She was pointing at the two of them. "So is there anything you would like to tell me?" After a brief period of silence, Nemu and Izan got up and said, "Yes, Hokage. Sama. In other words, we are not from this world and were sent to investigate. We were attacked and lost our way home, when Naruto found us." With a nod, Suande said, "Can you tell me anything else?" Nemu gave a nod and went on to describe the guard squads and the Soul Society in detail. Suande paid attention and made some notes. Upon finishing, Nemu glanced at the Tsunade and pondered her thoughts. Tsunade's expression was emotionless as she gazed at the group. She thought about everything she had heard. She never lied once in her explanation. She was thinking to herself, but it sounds so far-fetched, yet she said it like it was true. Nemu nodded in agreement as Suande remarked, "So you are from a different world entirely." Tsunade examined the folder containing all of the data they had managed to extract from the inmate. She stated that she was here to get Nemu and Izan back, but she made no mention of her origins. With a sigh, she wished for Sake. Neko. Besides Suande, an Anbu wearing a Neko mask materialized and bowed. "Yes, Hokage. Sama." The Anbu nodded when she said, "Please bring the prisoner here." On the leaves, she vanished in a swirl. She notices Orihime and turns back to face the group. She turned her attention to Naruto. "And who is she?" "This Orihime," he continued, "she is from the same world as Nemu and Izan." "Why is she here?" Tsunade asked, glancing at her, but she could already tell. Orihime got up and made his way over to the desk. She faced Tsunade while standing beside Naruto. "I came with Naneo to bring Nemu and Izan home," she stated. "I was injured and Naruto found me. He brought me here and Izan has been healing me." After nodding, Tsunade turned to face Naruto. With anger in her voice, she said, "So you had an injured person in your house and didn't bring them to the hospital?" The blonde was punched through a wall by her as she stood. "You idiot, what did I tell you about injured people?" Slowly, Naruto stood up and made his way back to the desk. Tsunade nodded when he said, "To bring them straight to the hospital as soon as I get through the gates." She questioned him, "Then why didn't you do that?" Naruto smiled sheepishly at her. "I used the hash and tag at my house to get back quickly and Izan saw Orihime and started the treatment." Tsunade glanced at Izan and nodded. Izan nodded and said, "It seems you were quiet the healer." Neko arrived with a weary looking Naneo just as Tsunade was ready to invite her to visit the hospital at some point. She was shocked to see Orihime standing next to the blonde who had defeated her the previous evening when she turned to look around the room. "Thank you, Neko," Suande said, and she bowed before disappearing. As Naneo gazed at Tsunade, she pondered her next move. Tsunade said, "Naneo eyes," glancing at her. "You are being moved to the care of Naruto Uzumaki. Your powers will be sealed as you await trial and punishment for attacking one of my shinobi. Do you understand?" With a hoarse voice from all the screaming she did while taking care of Anko, she said softly, "I understand." Tsunade raised what appeared to be a collar and nodded. She gave it to Naruto, and it was covered in seals. Naneo nodded, and Naruto placed it around her neck after saying, "This will sting a bit." As Naruto was about to put the collar on, Nemu stopped him. Tsunade gave her a perplexed look as she said, "It won't work." Nemu turned to Tsunade. "She doesn't use chakra, so the collar won't work. She uses Riryoku, which is spiritual energy. Is there a way to modify the seal to make it cut off spiritual energy?" Tsunade gave a nod and motioned for an Anbu member to adjust the collar. The collar was soon put up in Naneo after the modification was finished. Her strength quickly left her, and she felt as frail as a newborn. Tsunade, pleased with the process, turned to face Naruto. "She is your responsibility until the council decides how to handle this situation." He turned and led Naneo and the other girls out of the office after saying, "Yes, Ka-san." Naruto took Naneo's cuffs off as soon as they left the office. Knowing that the collar on her neck was the reason he was doing this, she nodded in gratitude. She posed no threat to him or anybody else while wearing that. She turned to face Nemu and Izan. who smiled slightly at her and asked her what she would do next. Alongside the Soul Society, Toshiro and Soy Fan were waiting for orders in front of the head captain. Yamamoto, the head captain, glanced at the two and saw that they were ready for the task. The captains nodded when he said, "Captain Soy Fan and Hitsugaya, I have selected you to assess the situation involving the lieutenants. You are not to engage the enemy but observe them to figure out the best way possible to retrieve the lieutenants. If the opportunity presents itself for you to retrieve the lieutenants, I will leave the call up to you. Do not underestimate these people. After seeing what happened to Lieutenant Eyes, we need to be prepared for anything." Together, they uttered the words, "Yes, head captain." Yamamoto showed them the remainder of the recording and said, "Furthermore, there is something you must see." When they witnessed Nemu and Isane kissing the blonde, their eyes widened. Soy Fan gazed in disbelief at this. As she searched for answers from the head captain, she wondered, what happening over there? In response to Fan's query, Yamamoto stated, "At this time we do not know the circumstances that lead to this. What you have seen does not leave this room." Dismissed. After leaving the office, Soy Fan and Toshiro went to their separate barracks. Soy Fan was deep in thought, mentally playing back the final segment of the tape. She was determined to find out what the man had done to the lieutenants. When she finally arrived at her destination and went to her office, she discovered a tiny black cat on her desk. With a bow, Soy Fan said, "Yoruichi-sama, what brings you here?" Yoruichi said, "Ah, Soy Fan, glad you're back. I heard that you were being sent out after the lieutenants." She blushed slightly as she said, "Yes, Yoruichi-sama, I will be leaving in a few hours." In response, Yoruichi said, "That's good, so what is the mission?" Soy Fan responded, "I apologize, Yoruichi-sama, but I am unable to tell you." "Oh come on, you can tell me," Yoruichi said as she leapt up onto her former student's shoulder and walked over to Soy Fan after jumping off the desk. She felt Yoruichi cradle her neck and began to say, "Iya." With her eyes as adorable as she could manage, she said, "Pretty please." Yoruichi grinned as Soy Fan said, "All right, fine." She couldn't help but smile at the adorable cat. "We're being set to observe the situation and determine the best way to extract the lieutenants from the area." With a nod, Yoruichi leapt off Soy Fan's shoulder and said, "Thanks for the telling me." She then walked out of the room. Squad 12 barracks is next. Both Toshiro and Soy Fan waited to be sent to the new world in the laboratory. They were both carrying their respective belongings and were curious as to why Miyuri was taking so long to open the Senkimon. Miyuri could see the anxiety on their faces as they both pondered where they would end up. As he worked, Miyuri said, "You will be placed close to the village. Lieutenant Eyes placed a marker in a place called Wave Country so that where you will end up." With a nod, Soy Fan turned to face Toshiro, who appeared somewhat relieved as well. Everyone turned as head captain Yamamoto stepped inside. The captains nodded as he turned to face them and sternly told them, "Remember to not take these people lightly." There was a, "Yes, head captain." "Okay then," he replied, "please be safe and return the lieutenants to us." "We will," stated Toshiro. With assurance, Soy Fan declared, "We won't fail you." Miyuri opened the Senkimon by pulling a lever. The first to pass through, Toshiro nodded to everyone. As he entered, he said, "See you everyone." Soy Fan approached the portal while keeping an eye on it. She entered and proceeded along the white path until she found herself in a tiny clearing. Toshiro gazed at her while standing beside a tree. He asked, "Shall we be off?" And Soy Fan gave him a nod. Leaving the clearing, they made their way to the Wave Country. Before long, they arrived at the Great Naruto Bridge and made their way into the village. They changed their clothes as their first action. Because Konoha authorities would be watching for anyone wearing their Shinigami uniforms, they were reluctant to do so. They located and went into a clothes store. Soy Fan discovered black pants and a dark purple tank top. She grinned at her new appearance and fastened her Zanpakuto to her back. She turned to see Toshiro with his sword on his back, dressed in a dark blue male kimono. He said, "Let's get going." Soy Fan nodded, eager to reach Konoha as quickly as possible. In Konoha, after returning home with the girls, Naruto was sitting on the couch with Isane and Nemu by his sides. While Orihime returned to her room to nap, Nanao sat across from them in silence. Nanao observed the group in front of her and pondered their thoughts. Isane broke the silence by asking, "So how are you feeling?" "Last night was trying." Nanao gave her a weary look and remarked, "That Anko seems to like to cause people pain." Using a chilly tone, Naruto stated, "That her job. I am just glad you're still in one piece." Izan said. Come on, I'll take you to your room and give you a look over. Naruto stood up after observing them go. He told Nemu, I'm going to train. And left the back. He needed to release some pent-up anger. When he arrived at the training field, he took a position in the center. Before creating 10 Kage Bushin, he inhaled deeply. As the clones faced their creator and assumed their positions, Naruto exhaled and turned to face his clones. When the first clone attempted a leg sweep, the original dodged, jumped over it, and brought his heel down, destroying the clone. With a quick spin around a punch, he delivered a forceful kick. He was still in a foul mood, but he kept destroying his clones. As he approached the tree line, he clenched his chakra into a fist. He swung his chakra-filled punch after glancing at the tree. Naruto stood there panting as the force split the tree in two. As Naruto gazed at the shattered tree, Kyuubi asked him, what did the tree ever do to you? With a sigh, Naruto took a seat and went into his mindscape. He approached Kyuubi's cage and regarded him with annoyance. He remarked, not funny, Kyuubi. The fox said, I wasn't trying to be. I know why you're angry. I would beat it if someone tried to take my mates, but the tree didn't deserve that. The Kyuubi chuckled when Naruto questioned, what with you and the tree? With a sarcastic reply, Kyuubi said, it was my favorite tree. After shaking his head, Naruto took a seat in front of the cage. He said, Baka. Kitsune. Kyuubi simply laughed. Looked at his friend, Kyuubi asked, what are you going to do now, Kit? You know they are going to send more people after them. They will be even stronger than that Nanao girl? Naruto's frustration began to show in his voice as he said, I know that. I can't stop thinking about it. Kit, it's going to be fine. Kyuubi replied, all you need to do is use my power and obliterate them so they will never come back. Naruto sighed and remarked, or they will send even more people to attack and it could start a war. With a smile on his face, Kyuubi said to Naruto, then you will destroy them as well. You are the container of the might Kyuubi no Yoko, no one will be able to stand against you. He began to unwind, and Naruto said, thanks for the vote of confidence. Kyuubi said, well Kit, go to your mates and jump their bones. Naruto sighed and glared at the fox. Arrow. Kitsune, he replied, you never going to let it go, are you? Kyuubi smiled and said, never, just remember to take pictures so I can remember it. As the Kyuubi's laughter reverberated in his mind, Naruto yelled, you are not going to see anything, and left his mindscape. Feeling a little better, he sighed and made his way to the house. Alongside Nanao and Izan as Izan bandaged the wounds from her encounter with Anko, Nanao lay on her bed. Nanao couldn't help but wonder what had changed about Izan and Nemu as they sat in silence. Previously, they appeared to keep to their captains and were quite quiet. Izan grinned as she finished dressing the final wound. As she rose from her chair, she remarked, you are all healed. After giving a nod, Nanao replaced her top. After putting on her clothes, Nanao turned to look at Izan. To get the attention of the silver-haired girl, she said, Izan. Izan smiled and said, yes. Nanao asked, what happened to you? And Izan gave him a perplexed look. Izan asked, her face showing confusion, what do you mean? With a sigh, Nanao turned to face her friend. I mean, what happened to you since you've been here? Oh, Izan said, at last comprehending. Many things, a great many things. Things here are so different than the Soul Society. As Nanao observed Izan, she questioned, like what? After a brief period of silence, Izan grinned and said, well, first of all, this place has only one Shinigami, which is surprising. Also, there is no hollow activity at all. Nanao nodded while listening and pondered what made this world unique, but she had to find out about other things first. Nanao questioned, why did that man come after you? The question surprised Izan, who was silent for a while. When she finally said, his name is Naruto, he came after us because he loves us. Confused, Nanao asked, loves you? How can he love you? He barely even knows you. Izan turned to face Nanao and finally said, he loves me. He saved me from being raped when we first arrived. He brought us to his home and treated us with respect. He cares for me more than any other man has before. Nanao said, you're just being deceived. He might just be using you to get to the Seirei. Nanao was abruptly struck hard in the cheek. She gave Izan a startled look. Izan never lost her temper. She could see her friend's pain in their eyes. With tears in her eyes, Izan said, never say that. Nanao gave her a startled look, and Izan turned and went to the door. Naruto would never do that. He didn't even know about the Seirei until this morning. He proposed to me and Nemu before you came. I'm sorry, I have to go. Izan hurried out of the room, leaving Nanao by herself in her chamber. She sprinted down the corridor and collided with Naruto. He saw the distress on her face and was taken aback to see her. After taking her in his arms, he led her to their room. She released all of her emotions as she sobbed into his chest. All Naruto wanted to do was comfort her, so he just held her close. She soon began to cry less, but she refused to let go of Naruto and kept her arms around him. With Nanao wondering what she had said to cause Izan such distress, Nanao sat in silence. Izan wouldn't have it when she simply stated what might be happening. The sun was lowering and evening was approaching when she let out a sigh and glanced out the window. When Nanao heard the door open, she thought to herself, at least they have a beautiful sunset. She turned to see Nemu carrying a tray of food inside. In her monotone voice, she said, "Dinner time." Nanao approached her and accepted the tray. She started to drool as soon as the aroma of food filled the air. At last, she realized she was starving. She started eating right away, and before long, the food was gone. When she finished eating, Nemu took the tray and watched. She started to walk away, but Nanao stopped her. Nemu just nodded when she asked, "Can I talk to you?" She put the tray down and sat down on the bed. She looked at Nanao and asked, "What is it you wish to talk about?" "Can you tell me about the man we are staying with?" she said. After a brief period of silence, Nemu broke into a tiny smile. As Nanao listened, she stated, "His name is Naruto Uzumaki. He the Gama, Sennin and Jonin shinobi of Konoha." "Sennin, shinobi?" Nanao inquired, her expression bewildered. Nemu said, "Let me explain. In this world, shinobi are the main military force. There are 5 major villages that house and train shinobi, and we are currently in Konohagakure, the strongest of the villages. Every shinobi is assigned a rank. First there is Genin, this is the lowest rank in the forces. They are academy graduates who have just become shinobi. Next is Chunin. These are experienced shinobi who passed the Chunin exam. After that is Jonin. They are some of the strongest shinobi in the village and teach Genin. Next is Anbu, which are the special forces. After that are Kage. Finally there is Kage, they are the strongest of all the shinobi and run the villages. Naruto is a Sennin, which means he is a sage and also someone of great power, wisdom or holy standing." As she processed all of the information, Nanao remained silent. She asked, "So Naruto is very strong?" And Nemu gave her a nod. Nemu replied, "Yes he is. He is next in line to become Hokage." Nanao inquired, "What is he like as a person?" Nemu remained quiet for a while. As she considered the blonde, she remarked, "He is very kind and compassionate. He always tries his hardest to protect what precious to him. To his friends he is a kind person, to his enemies he is a monster not to be trifled with. He is the man who stole my heart." Nanao gazed in disbelief at Nemu. She asked herself if she had heard correctly when she said, "She loves him." It was unbelievable to her. It was unprecedented for Nemu to be in love. Nanao questioned incredulously, "Are you serious?" As if it were the easiest thing in the world to comprehend, Nemu replied, "Yes. I love him as does Izan." In Nanao's mind, Izan does as well. She said to Nemu, "How did this happen?" Nemu remained quiet for a while. Upon reflection, she remarked, "It crept up on me as well as Izan. When I first met him he was unlike any man I have ever met. He didn't treat me like I was inferior or I was a failure. He treated as he equal and was more than willing to help me. When I told him about father, he was angry for what he did to me. No one has ever been angry about what father has done to me. Everyone back home just accepted it, he doesn't. He makes me feel safe." In shock and embarrassment, Nanao gazed at Nemu. She was among those who believed Nemu was alright and that Mayuri's actions were insignificant. That was untrue. She was in pain, but she repressed it. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, but it took someone from another planet to make her see that. Nanao inquired, "Does he love you back?" With a simple smile, Nemu extended her hand and asked, "Does this answer your question?" Nanao notices the ring on her hand. With even more surprise in her voice, she exclaimed, "He proposed," and Nemu nodded. Nanao recoiled slightly when Nemu said, "He proposed right before your attack. He proposed to Izan as well." Nanao yelled, "He is marrying both of you, that can't happen." Nemu declared, "Here it is perfectly legal. He is the last of his clan, so he falls under the Clan Restoration Act. This allows for the last of any recognized clan to take multiple wives to restore his clan." Before an idea came to him, Nanao remarked, "So he is the last. So he just using you as breeding stock." Nemu stood up and gave Nanao a face slap, expressing her rage. "He would never do that," she exclaimed. "He is a good person, and if he wanted breeding stock he would have chosen them long ago. He wanted to marry for love, not to just rebuild his clan." "I apologize for not understanding," Nanao said, nodding as she glanced at Nemu. Nemu got up and hurried out of the room, leaving Naneo to think. I apologize for slapping you, she said. I was out of line. She wondered what would happen as she once again peered out the window. With Toshiro and Soy Fawn, the two strolled at a respectable pace in the direction of Konoha. In order for security to be a little more relaxed when they arrived in the village, they wanted to take their time. They had not yet passed anyone on their journey and both walked in silence. As Soy Fawn surveyed the surrounding forest, she was struck by how tall and vibrant the trees were compared to those she had previously seen. A black flash flashed through the trees as she turned, and she reached for her sword. She was aware that something evil might be hiding behind those trees. Toshiro was just as cautious as she was, she realized as she turned around. They noticed a wagon approaching them as they were walking. The wagon stops as they moved to the side. The man on the wagon smiled and said, "Hello, strangers." Without taking his hand off his blade, Toshiro said, "Hello. What can I do for you?" Seeing his nervousness, the man grinned and said, "I mean no harm, just a traveling merchant wanting to sell his wares." With their hands down from their swords, they remained vigilant. Soy Fawn questioned, "So why stop?" He grinned and got off his cart, saying, "You two look like you are in need of some good wares." He moved to the wagon's side and opened a side panel to reveal his belongings. He possessed a wide variety of goods that most people would desire. Among many other things, there were textiles and weapons. So see anything you like. Soy Fawn saw a small book titled History of Konohagakure as the two captains examined his clothing. She took it in her hands and turned to the cover. When they eventually reached Konoha, she knew this would be helpful. The merchant grinned when she asked, "How much for the book?" "It only cost 50 ryo. He continued, "I giving you a discount due to the fact this is the first time I was able to get rid of that book." With a nod, Soy Fawn gave the man his money. When Toshiro found nothing of interest, the merchant quickly packed up and walked away from the two of them, grinning and waving. After glancing at Soy Fawn, Toshiro turned to the book and grinned and nodded as he read the title. Soy Fawn read the book while they walked the rest of the way to Konoha. After several hours of walking, the enormous stone gates were finally visible. Soy Fawn was halfway through the book by this point. They soon arrived at the gate and saw a crowd of people. Glancing to the front of the line, Toshiro saw that two pairs of armed men were halting everyone. As they waited in line, he whispered to Soy Fawn, "This could be a problem." Soy Fawn observed everyone and nodded. Soy Fawn returned to her book and said, "Don't draw attention to us." Gazing at her, Toshiro questioned why she didn't seem concerned. Toshiro said, "They could catch us and the mission will be in trouble." Soy Fawn didn't raise her head from her book. Toshiro gasped as she said, "Let them stop us. We have a lower chance of causing suspicion if we enter through the main gate. If we attempt to enter through another gate, we may be apprehended and questioned. What if they inquire about our origins?" Soy Fawn grinned when Toshiro asked. Toshiro simply shook his head and tried to calm himself. They soon arrived at the front of the line, but one of the men in the wolf mask stopped them. "I'll take care of that," she said, turning back to her book. He glanced at Soy Fawn and Toshiro and said, "Names and business in Konoha." With a charming smile, Soy Fawn introduced herself to the guard, saying, "My name is Soy Fawn, and this is my little brother Toshiro. We are from the land of Wave, and we were told that the clothes in Konoha were some of the best. In order to teach us how to manage a business, our father felt that it would be best if we came here and stayed for a few months. Our father is a retired samurai who taught my brother and I the way of the sword so we can protect ourselves," Soy Fawn said, grinning as the wolf. Masked man nodded but cast a suspicious glance at their Zanpakuto. She smiled naively at the guard and waited for his response, saying, "He has no experience running anything other than soldiers. Please sign in and welcome to Konoha." The guard nodded after examining them and said, "If you go straight you will find an inn and market area." He then handed her a clipboard. "Thank you, sir." She signed both her and Toshiro's names, and her voice was so sweet that it would make many men blush. "Thank you for your assistance." Toshiro, still stunned by what had happened at the gate, was silent as they entered the village and made their way to the inn. He eventually awoke and turned to face Soy Fawn in bewilderment. What took place back there? As they strolled, he inquired. As they arrived at an inn, Soy Fawn gave Toshiro her customary icy gaze and said, "Simple, I just played a part to get inside." After securing a room and preparing for their stay, Soy Fawn intended to find out as much as she could about the fighting force in this area and track down the lieutenants, while Toshiro would speak with the village's youths and children to see if he could elicit any information. Toshiro glanced at Soy Fawn as she stated, "First things first, I am going to go find a job." "Why do you need to find a job?" Toshiro asked, giving her a strange look. "We might be here for a while, so it is best if we have a source of income, as well as blending in with the locals," she said, turning to face her fellow captain. They left the room to begin their assignments after Toshiro said, "Okay, then I will go to the library and learn what I can about this place." With Toshiro, when Toshiro tried to locate the library while strolling down the street, he soon got lost. Looking around, he saw that he was standing in front of a huge tower with a leaf as its emblem on top. He went into the tower, thinking, might as well ask for direction. He ascended the stairs until he arrived at a desk occupied by a tall brunette sitting with a pig by her side, dressed in a blue kimono. She smiled and said, "Hey, how may I help you?" With his typical sour tone, he said, "Hello, my name is Toshiro Hitsugaya, and I am new in town and I was wondering where the library is." The youngster laughed. "Well, welcome to Konoha." She continued, "My name is Shizune the Hokage Assistant. The library is on the other side of the village. Let me show you where it is." As Shizune began to stand up, Toshiro raised his hand and said, "I can find it, it is not necessary." "Really?" Shizune said, her tone slightly amused. "How long have you been in the village?" After a brief period of silence, Toshiro said, "A few hours." Shizune grinned in response. When she eventually stood up, she said, "I thought so, come on, I show you." The big double doors exploded as they were ready to leave, sending a body flying out. Toshiro and Shizune watched in horror as a voice yelled, "You idiot!" from the office. They turned to face the man on the ground and watched him get to his feet. Toshiro examined him after recognizing him from the tape. Despite his lackluster appearance, he was aware that appearances could be deceiving. He stood up and went into the office, and he watched. As he entered the office with Shizune and Toshiro following closely behind, he asked, "What the problem, Ka-san?" A very curvaceous woman with long blonde hair exclaimed, "This is crazy Naruto. How can we plan a wedding so soon? We have to invite all the Kages, the daimyo, and other nobles." Naruto began to say, but was hurled across the room when a fist struck his face. As another hole was made in the wall, the blonde woman exclaimed, "No, in the final, we are sticking to the original schedule." With a sigh, Naruto stood up and smiled, asking, "Can you at least think about it?" Her stern expression gradually softened into a smile as she said, "I think about it, now get out of my office, I have paperwork to finish." Naruto grinned. He gave a mock salute and leapt out the window, saying, "Yes Ka-san. Use the damn door." She sighed and yelled after him. She swiveled in her seat and saw Toshiro and Shizune. "Can I help you?" "Sorry Tsunade. Sama, we were just leaving," Shizune said, blushing and bowing. Tsunade said, "We?" Before noticing Toshiro, she said with a smile, "Hello, I am Tsunade Senju the Godem Hokage of Konoha, and who might you be?" Toshiro raised his hand. "I am Toshiro Hitsugaya, my sister and I have just moved to the village." He continued, "It is an honor to meet you." Tsunade grinned and thought, what a respectful boy. She questioned him, "So what brings you to the tower today?" After a brief period of silence, Toshiro finally said, "I was on my way to the library and I got lost." "So any plans while you were in the village?" She smiled, adding, "Well, I'm sure Shizune can show you where it is." Unexpectedly, Toshiro started to perspire at this question. He remained quiet for a while. "Let me guess you have no idea what you want to do," Tsunade said with a smile after noticing this. Toshiro simply nodded, happy that she had reached that conclusion. "I was going to the library to find out what options I had," he stated. "How old are you? 12-13 years old?" Tsunade asked, nodding, and Toshiro began to grow irritated gradually. He said, trying not to cry, "I am 15. Tsunade uttered the words, 15, Hama, and Toshiro glanced at the elderly woman, curious about her thoughts. Her words, Tsunade, Sama, drew Tsunade out of her reverie. Tsunade smiled and said, "Well Toshiro, I hope you find what you are looking for. If you need any help feel free to stop by and Shizune or I will be delighted to help." With Soy. Fawn. As Soy. Fawn walked down the street after leaving yet another store, she sighed and asked herself, why is finding a job so hard? She had inquired about a job at least 5 different establishments, but none of them were hiring. What can I do? She asked herself. I need to find someplace to work so I can observe our targets and learn the best way to extract them. After walking slowly, she came to a small stand. When she entered, she discovered that it was a ramen stand. After examining the costs, she made the decision to eat lunch there. As Soy. Fawn sat down, a brunette grinned and said, "Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen, what can I get for you today?" After a brief perusal of the menu, Fawn said, "Just one miso ramen please." The waitress nodded. She pondered her next course of action while she awaited her order. After observing her while she pondered, the waitress promptly brought her food. She smiled and said, "Here you go." Fawn nodded and began to eat. Her face couldn't help but lighten as she took her first bite. The waitress smiled as she finished her first bite and remarked, "This is really good." "Thank you." She replied, "We pride ourselves on having the best ramen in the village." Fawn answered, "I can see why, it must get really busy." The server nodded, "Yeah it is." She continued, "I asked my father to hire at least another person but he won't listen. He says no one will want to work this and would run after their first shift." A male voice said, "It's true," and Fawn turned to see a brown-haired older man move toward the front. The waitress said, her voice irritated, "Dad, that was only the last person who you hired." Observing the argument between the two, Fawn started formulating a strategy to secure employment here. As she was thinking, the waitress moved on to the growing number of patrons. As she started to fall behind, Fawn observed and made the decision to make a plan. As the waitress walked by, Fawn said, "I can help out if you like." The girl turned to face Fawn after pausing for a moment. "Really?" she inquired, startled. "Budai. Well okay, come on back, you can use my spa apron." Fawn rose from her chair and walked to the rear. The waitress greeted her and gave her the apron. "Okay. First here your apron, make sure to smile." The server responded, "My name is Ayame by the way." Ayame grinned as Fawn responded, Fawn, it is nice to meet you Fawn," she said, "now to work." Fawn smiled and soon she and Ayame were taking order after order. She soon saw why many of the hires ran away. The volume of business the stand had was amazing. She did her best and soon they fell into a very good rhythm. Hours passed by quickly and the rush was soon over. As the last customer left Fawn let out a small sigh of relief. She felt as she'd been sparing all day without a break. "Well, you did very well," Tucci said as he watched Fawn. "Most people run screaming once we're done." Fawn smiled, "It like training," she said, "you just have to push through." "Training?" Tucci asked. "You a shinobi?" Fawn shook her head. "No, my father taught me how to use a sword to defend myself," she said. Tucci nodded. "Well, that's a smart man," Tucci said. "I wish I thought of that for Ayame. Anyway, how would you like to work here?" Fawn smiled. "I would like that," she said. "Hey Tucci, Ayame. You here?" A voice called and Fawn turned. She headed towards the front and saw a tall blonde standing near the counter. He noticed her and smiled. "Hello, are you a new hire? My name is Naruto, it is nice to meet you." Fawn recognized him from the recording and couldn't help but study him. He was well built and seemed to be on guard even though he looked relaxed. She was pulled out of her musing when she noticed a hand waving in front of her face. She swatted at the hand and saw that it was the blonde. "Oh good, you're done spacing out," he said with a smile. "Hello, my name is Fawn, may I take your order?" she said and he smiled at her. "Okay, I would like one Naruto special please," he said with a smile. "Naruto special?" Fawn said unsure. She didn't see it on the menu and wondered what he was talking about. Ayame walked out, noticed her confusion, and went over to help when she noticed Naruto. "Hello Naruto," she said with a smile and he smiled back. "Having the usual?" "Of course," he said with a smile. This made Fawn even more confused, but Ayame gave her a reassuring smile. "It will be right out," Ayame said and led Fawn to the back. She led her to the storage area and smiled. "That Naruto, our most frequent customer. Dad made him the special when he was a kid and he'd been ordering it ever since. He the only one who knows about it." Fawn nodded and soon his order was done and she took it out to him. She was surprised by the size of the bowl, but what surprised her the most was how fast he ate it. It took him all of 5 minutes to finish the entire bowl. He let out a sigh of satisfaction as he sat back. "The best ramen as always," he said with a smile. Fawn nodded and took the bowl away. He sighed and slowly got up. "Have a good day, and it was nice to meet you Fawn." Fawn nodded and watched him leave. She smiled. Now that she knew what her target names was, she could find out more about him. Even better, since he frequented the ramen stand, she could find out more about him and what he had done to the lieutenants. Soon her impromptu shift ended and she said her goodbyes to Ayame and Tucci. After receiving her official schedule, she made her way back to the inn. When she got paid, she was going to look for a permanent home. Toshiro was waiting for her when she arrived at the inn. She grinned when he asked, "How was the job search?" "Found one." She continued, "The target frequents it so we can better observe him." Toshiro gave a nod. "That's good," he said. "I met the village leader and have also met the target. He is the son of the village leader." "Soy." Fawn stated, "That will complicate things," and Toshiro gave a nod. "Also, since you work at a place he goes frequently, wouldn't he bring the lieutenants with him?" replied Toshiro. After she said, "Very true, but this was the only job I was able to find," Toshiro gave her a nod. "Well, you could have applied for shinobi status." Toshiro replied, "I read in one of the books that if you have some skills in the shinobi arts you can join the shinobi forces. They would test to see what rank you would receive." "That a good idea, but we don't want to draw attention to ourselves." "Soy," Fawn responded. Nodding, "Soy." Fawn pondered what else he had discovered. The two captains seized their zanpakuto when they heard a sudden crash in the adjacent room. Toshiro and Soy. Fawn each took a side of the door and exchanged glances. Soy. Fawn nodded in response to Toshiro's nod, opened the door, and hurried inside. As they scanned the room, they noticed that one of Soy. Fawn's bags had dropped to the ground. When they saw it move, they approached it slowly. Something emerged as the strings of the bag gradually widened. Both of them watched as a small black cat came out of the bag, stretched, and looked around the room before focusing on the two captains. The two captains fell to the ground as the cat said, "Hello." The cat turned to face the pair, and they turned back. The cat grinned as it observed them. "That was fun." With a startled tone, "Soy." Fawn said, "Lady Yoruichi, what are you doing here?" Looking at the two, Yoruichi leapt to the bed and lay down, saying, "Now that's better. I was tired and wanted to take a nap and your clothes are comfy, so I jumped in your bag and fell asleep." Toshiro gave her a suspicious look. Yoruichi simply grinned when he asked, "So you're telling me you've been sleeping in her bag for 3 days and she didn't feel you when she changed?" She jumped up and went to the window after saying, "Maybe." Grinning, she used her tail to open it. "I am going to explore, you two have fun, and Soy. Fawn, make sure to not ravage Toshiro while I am gone." The black cat laughed, and the two captains flushed. She walked into the village, thinking, that never gets old. With Naruto carried a number of bags as he strolled through the village. He was extremely embarrassed when he had to purchase certain feminine items because he had spent the majority of the day shopping for everyone. Wondering what he would do about the wedding, he sighed to himself. They were already making plans, and he had no idea what they were doing. It was crazy how many things needed to be done and how many people were invited. He was walking along when he caught a glimpse of a cat out of the corner of his eye and asked himself, "Why does this have to be complicated?" He stopped because of its eyes, not because it was the blackest cat he had ever seen. He seemed to be drawn to them because they were gold. The cat continued to stare at him as he leaned down and grinned at it, saying, "I haven't seen you around here." It approached him slowly before coming to a stop in front of him. With a smile, he gestured for the cat to approach by holding out his free hand. After a few moments of staring, the cat ran up his arm and settled on his shoulder. This surprised Naruto, but he still grinned. The cat nodded when he said, "Well, I see that you were getting comfortable." Grinning, he carried on toward his house. They soon reached his house after he gave the cat a smile. He put the bags down as he entered the kitchen. This gave the cat the chance to leap off his shoulder and land on the counter. Grinning, he made his way to the cabinets and took out a bowl. He filled the bowl with milk and placed it in front of the cat. As he watched, he felt some arms encircle his waist and said, "Enjoy." Nemu put her head on his back and said, "Welcome home." Grinning, Naruto turned around. After kissing her, he said, "Thanks for the warm welcome." The cat watched curiously as Nemu kissed him back. Before long, they parted ways and grinned. When Nemu finally saw the cat, she turned to face Naruto. As she watched the cat sip the milk, she asked him, "Who this?" "A new friend and I picked up." Naruto grinned cheerfully. "He rode on my shoulder home." With a nod, Nemu raised the cat and examined it. To meet its eyes, she leveled it. She put her back down after saying, "This cat is a girl." Naruto gave the cat a smile and a nod. He smiled and said, "Well, she is welcome to stay," and Nemu nodded. The two quickly left the room after she gave the cat a quick glance. The cat grinned as it observed them. Yoruichi hopped off the counter to look around the house and remarked, "It seems it was easier than I thought to get close." She hurried out of the kitchen and surveyed the living room. After glancing around, she carried on with her journey. There were numerous photos when she leapt up onto one of the tables. She examined them and found that, with the exception of a few, The blonde appeared in most of them. Eventually, she found herself upstairs after continuing her journey. She noticed an open door as she proceeded down the hallway. As she walked in, she noticed an Orihime near a window. Yoruichi went over to see what was wrong because she appeared depressed. The girl jumped when she asked, "What wrong, Orihime?" Orihime noticed a black cat staring up at her, so she turned to look around. She said, "Yoruichi?" And the cat gave her a nod. She took her in her arms and gave her a hug. As she held the cat, she exclaimed, "Yoruichi. Can you please let me go?" Yoruichi said, "It's good to see you too." Orihime placed Yoruichi on the bed and apologized. "It's just nice to see a familiar face. So tell me what's wrong." Orihime sighed, and Yoruichi nodded in comprehension. With a puzzled expression on her face, Yoruichi said, "It's just I didn't expect for things to get really complicated." She inquired, "What has happened?" And Orihime went on to describe the meeting and Nemu and Isane's engagement. As she took in the information, Yoruichi remarked, "I see that as troubling." Getting Yoruichi's attention, Orihime nodded and said, "I know, but I can see why they fell in love with him." She said, "What do you mean?" To the Orihime, "He reminds me of Ichigo so much, but he is different from Ichigo as well. He always smiles and makes everyone happy. He never seems down and always seems to be moving forward. It is hard not to be attracted to him," Orihime said, glancing at the cat and thinking about the blonde. After hearing this, Yoruichi watched Orihime. Orihime turned away when she said, "You are falling for him, aren't you?" As she tried to sort out her emotions, she looked out the window and said, "I don't know." Slowly, Yoruichi stood up and stretched. She, Soy, Fan, and Toshiro had been in Konoha for 2 weeks. Konoha was a lot of fun, she had to admit. She had explored the village and couldn't help but marvel at the lifestyle of the people of this world. Although they appeared to be at war all the time, the world was also at peace. Still in feline form, Yoruichi left Soy, Fan's room and made his way into the village. As she ran across the rooftops toward a particular house on the opposite side of the village, she observed the sun rising over the faces of the Hokage. She sprang quickly over the rooftops. All of the shinobi waved at her as she passed them. With the exception of a select few who were always carrying dogs, most of the shinobi had been very kind to her since she had first arrived in the village. Searching for an open window, she leapt to the final roof before arriving at her destination. In one of the upper windows, she noticed a flash. When she looked out the window with her golden eyes, she saw a tall blonde with his hand running through his hair. A woman with dark hair soon joined him and slowly put her arms around his shoulders. After a few moments of staring out the window, the blonde man turns to give the girl behind him a passionate kiss. Soon after, the two walked out the window and returned inside. Yoruichi leapt in the direction of the house and landed on the roof without making a sound. Now to get inside, she said to herself as she walked across the roof. She leapt to a balcony on the house's side. Glancing around, she crossed the balcony slowly and silently, keeping an eye out for any movement. She turned as the sound of a sliding door suddenly filled her ears. Naneo stood in the doorway, looking wretched. Her hair stuck out in spots, and his glasses were crooked. She was dressed in a simple purple kimono and sash. The tiny collar on Naneo's neck was one item that caught Yoruichi's attention. She sensed that it greatly weakened Naneo and repressed her Ryastu. Yoruichi leapt onto the railing of the balcony and approached Naneo. When Naneo finally saw her, he gave her a suicidal glance. "You here to torment me as well?" Naneo asked, her anger audible as she glanced at the small black cat next to her. Instead of speaking, Yoruichi simply cocked her head to the side. Naneo glanced at her and smiled slightly. "Will I rather be tormented by cuteness than by snakes?" As Yoruichi saw Naneo tremble, she took a note to see what was causing it but returned her attention to Naneo. After adjusting her hair and glasses, Naneo began to gently caress Yoruichi's fur. After some silence, Naneo remarked, "This place is not what I expected to be." Her features relaxed as she gazed into the trees. "I thought that Izan and Nemu were being held here against their will, but that not it at all. They want to be here. They are in love with the one called Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He is the one who stopped me from taking them back to the Soul Society." Naneo looked at Yoruichi and let out a, "Why am I telling this to a cat?" In her feline form, Yoruichi simply gazed into Naneo's eyes and gave her best, "Tell me," expression. Naneo simply glanced at Yoruichi and grinned as if she understood the expression. Naneo said with a little laugh, "Well, I rather tell you than anyone else. When I first got here and I separated Nemu and Izan from Naruto, Nemu attacked me. She yelled at me. I had never seen Nemu show so much emotion. I knocked the pair out and got out of the village, but he found me. I tried to fight him off, but he completely overpowered me. He created clones of himself and controlled the wind. I soon found myself surrounded by masked figures and talking to the leader of the village. Naneo was quiet for a moment before she grasped her arm. She exposed her arms by lifting the kimono sleeve. Scars were all over it. When I didn't cooperate, I was sent to a woman named Anko. She showed me how much pain one could take and went beyond it. I couldn't last. I soon told her everything. I was locked in a room that somehow suppressed my Ryastu. I don't know how long I spent there, but I was once again brought to see the village leader. She had Nemu and Isane verify my information and I released in Naruto's custody. They put this suppression collar on me first. Naneo displayed her anger. This was supposed to be a simple extraction mission, but nothing as simple as it. No, it's not, a voice said behind Yoruichi and Naneo. Naruto was leaning against the door frame when Naneo turned around. As he approached her, he gave her an unreadable look. He saw Yoruichi as he approached her. A tiny smile spread across Naruto's face as he asked, "So enjoy talking to cats, do you?" Without a word, Naneo glared at Naruto. Gazing out into the forest, Naruto sighed and said, "I'm sorry if I hurt you in our fight, but I couldn't let you take Nemu and Isane. That doesn't allow you to keep them here." Naneo scowled and said emphatically, "They have lives back in the Soul Society." With a scowl, Naruto said to Naneo, "I am not keeping them here. They're the one who chose to stay here. I wouldn't keep them here against their will." Naneo, her rage visible, questioned, "Then why are they still here? They have jobs to do. They're needed at home." "You don't think I know that?" Naruto yelled, his rage taking over as he glared at Naneo. His eyes gradually turning red. Naruto's eyes gradually returned to their typical blue color as he sighed, his eyes sad. "You don't think I know that? Sorry for the outburst." Naneo and Yoruichi gazed at Naruto with a mixture of wonder and fear. Then Naruto simply sighed and went into the house, saying, "Come on, it's time to eat." After a few moments of standing motionless, Naneo and Yoruichi followed Naruto inside the house. As Yoruichi surveyed the house, he was struck by how comfortable it felt. She watched Isane and Nemu set the table after Naneo led her into the dining room. Orihime was sitting quietly at the table when Yoruichi slowly made his way around it. It appeared as though she was gazing into space. When Yoruichi leapt onto Orihime's lap, shocking the girl, Orihime looked down and saw the black cat in her lap, grinning. As she observes everyone settling in and getting ready to eat, she gently strokes Yoruichi. With a broad smile on his face, Naruto sat with Nemu and Isane by his sides. Before she ate, Naneo sat a few seats away and gave Naruto a long, scowling look. Yoruichi leapt to the table and noticed Orihime's food next to a plate of milk. Naruto was grinning at her when she turned to look at him. He gestured first to Yoruichi and then to the milk. Yoruichi observed Naruto's smile widen and gave him an understanding nod. Naruto turned to Nemu and watched as the little black cat began to drink the milk. "So any plans today, my Heinz?" he asked joyfully. Isane finished a bite of her toast and said, "We will be planning the wedding with Tsunade. We won't be home till late." With anime tears in his eyes, Naruto pretended to pout and said, "Ah, no Naruto time then." "We will have Naruto time," Nemu said softly into Naruto's ear while grinning and leaning against him. "Just be a good boy and you will have us all to yourself soon." Naruto said, "Yes ma'am," with a quick blush on his face. Nemu leaned away, a tiny smile spreading across her face. Looking at Naneo and Orihime, Isane smiled and said, "Naruto, why don't you take Naneo and Orihime out to see the village?" Naruto nodded slowly in agreement as he glanced at Isane in the middle of his bite. "Good boy. Since I am such a good boy, can't I get a reward?" Naruto asked Isane as he finished his meal. Isane laughed and said, "Of course," slowly putting her lips to Naruto's. The couple's kiss was witnessed by all. Yoruichi simply watched with a look of wonder on her cat face. Naneo turned away as a hint of red appeared on her face, Orihime was flushed, and Nemu simply grinned. "Wow, I've never seen Isane that passionate before," Yoruichi reflected as she observed the couple sharing a kiss. With a passionate expression on their faces, Naruto and Isane broke the kiss. Based on Isane's appearance, it appeared that Naruto would be allowed to take her there. Nemu sprang to her feet and leaned over Naruto. "My turn," Nemu said, putting her lips to Naruto's. The Naneo and Orihime became even more enraged as a result. The room was filled with the passion of the kissing couple. The two only paused once to catch their breath before continuing. With a big smile on her face, Nemu finally broke the kiss. "I see you later," she said as she left the room, adding a sway to her hips. A broad smile spread across Naruto's face as he watched her. Naruto was left alone with Nanao and Orihime after Izan said, "I have to go as well," and walked away from the table. After making several clones and instructing them to tidy the table, Naruto stood up and stretched. With a broad smile, he turned to face Orihime and said, "Would you like to see the village you too?" Orihime kept stroking Yoruichi's fur without saying anything. The question, "Is there anywhere you would like to go?" was directed at Nanao by Naruto. Nanao gave Naruto a startled look before responding, "Why are you asking me?" with a note of interest in her voice. Naruto said, "Yeah," and nodded. "Why?" replied Nanao. "I am your prisoner, why are you asking me where I want to go?" "You may be a prisoner, but while you are in my custody, I will treat you like a guest in my home." Naruto laughed as he replied, "Also you're not really a threat." Nanao nodded, but he was a little upset because he thought she posed no threat to him. She knew what he was saying was true, despite the fact that it infuriated her. The sound of her name being called jolted her out of her reverie. Naruto was standing over her when she turned. He leaned close and asked, "Are you okay?" Nanao avoided blushing as she gazed into Naruto's eyes. She understood the attraction between Naruto and Nemu and Izan. His blue eyes made it very easy to lose yourself in them. She had to concede that he had a very pretty face, and the facial features that resembled whiskers gave him a savage appearance. Nanao blushed when Naruto said, "Hello," and swiftly turned her head away from him to hide her face. Nanao said, "I want to go to the library," after she managed to finally control her blush. Naruto turned to face Orihime and nodded, saying, "That sounds good. Do you want to come with us to the library, Orihime?" Orihime stared at Yoruichi and remained silent for a while. Orihime desired a conversation with Yoruichi. She answered, "I like to stay here." Naruto smiled warmly and said, "That's fine." He gave it to Orihime after drawing a try. "Tip kunai." Orihime nodded and picked up the sharp slowly, saying, "If you need me, just throw that and I be there in a flash. Meet me in the living room when you're ready to head to the library." "Nanao," Naruto said, turning back to face Nanao. After entering the living room, Naruto waited for Nanao to join him for a few minutes. After a few minutes, Nanao entered. She had on a white sash and a light blue kimono. With haste, Nanao said, "I am ready." Slowly getting to his feet, Naruto grinned and said, "Then let's go." He then escorted Nanao out of the house. It was still early in the morning, and the majority of the villagers were still getting up, so Nanao walked slowly behind Naruto as they moved through the village. Many of the shinobi were moving around, Nanao noticed. Nanao stayed near Naruto in the hopes that they wouldn't encounter the purple-haired devil. She had to acknowledge that she never really got a good look at the village when she looked around it. She could see why people loved to live there because it was so lovely. Nanao couldn't help but smile at the size of the library when they finally arrived at the Konoha Library. As they entered the three-story building, Nanao noticed that many people in regular clothes were moving between the first two levels, while the entrance to the third floor appeared to be guarded. Naruto exclaimed, "Welcome to Konoha Library," with enthusiasm. "Since you are considered a civilian, you have access to the first two levels. Only shinobi have access to level 3, so stay away from there, so enjoy." "Okay," said Nanao, nodding. "Good," Naruto replied. "I will be at one of the tables near the front desk if you need me." Nanao watched Naruto leave, and then she made her way to the first level shelf row. She was glad to be in a comfortable place and always felt at home at the library. She hurried to find the book she was looking for on the shelves. Nothing has caught her attention yet. The majority of the books on the first floor appeared to be reference and history books. She hurried to the second floor and rummaged through the bookshelves in search of a good book. When she eventually came across a book that piqued her interest, she hurried to retrieve it. As she hurried in its direction, she bumped into someone and knocked them down. Nanao said, "I am so sorry," as she bent down to assist the person she had knocked over. She was startled as soon as she saw the face of the person she had knocked over. Captain Hitsugaya was there. "Captain." With a swift gesture toward the rear of the aisle, Toshiro asked Nanao to stop talking. With a nod, Nanao trailed Toshiro. Before long, the two were alone. Nanao said, "Captain, I am so glad to see you," as she gave Toshiro a startled and joyful look. "I am glad to see that you're well," Toshiro said with a smile. "Captain Soy. Fan and I were sent to retrieve you and the other lieutenants." "I understand," Nanao said, nodding, but a slight frown appeared on her face. "But that might be a problem." Toshiro scowled and said, "Explain." Nanao frowned and nodded, saying, "Nemu and Izane have been compromised. They say they are in love with Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He is the blonde who stopped me from taking them home." Toshiro gave a nod. After seeing the video of the kiss, he and Fan hoped it wasn't real, but Nanao's confirmation made their work more difficult. This is most troubling, he said, frowning. That not even the half of it, she said. They will be marrying Naruto in a few months. It dawned on Toshiro that this problem just got a lot harder. With Orihime, Yoruichi in human form was seated beside Orihime as she sat in her room. Orihime's eyes were sad as she gazed at the elderly woman beside her. With a sad expression, Orihime said, I don't know what to do. These feelings I have are so confusing. Yoruichi's eyes had a maternal look as she gazed at Orihime. She said, tell me what's wrong. Her eyes began to well up with tears, and she responded, I think I have feeling for Naruto. But I still also have feeling for Ichigo. I don't know what to do. Hey, it okay, Yoruichi said in a calming voice as she gathered Orihime in an embrace. Now tell me what made these feelings for Naruto arise. She wiped her eyes and nodded. I don't know, she responded, they just happened. When I first met him back when I first got here, I thought he was a nice guy. He reminded me of Ichigo. Then he saved me from being killed and brought me to his home. He took care of me. He would even come see me even when he was busy. He made me feel important. Orihime flushed at this remark, and Yoruichi grinned. I can see why you're falling for him, she said, nodding. He is also very caring and not bad on the eyes either. So what are you going to do about your feeling you having? Upon hearing this, Orihime scowled and said, I just don't know. I can test him for you, Yoruichi said, smiling, just to see if he's good enough for you. Yoruichi nodded. Orihime shook her head and waved her arms wildly in response, saying, Yo, you don't have to do that. Ignoring this, Yoruichi smiled at Orihime and said, yes, I think I test him. I have to make sure he good enough for my friend. Orihime attempted to stay, but Yoruichi had left. Knowing that Yoruichi wouldn't return until she had her fun, she sighed to herself. She looked out the window and thought to herself, I hope Naruto will be okay. Alongside Nanao and Naruto waited for Nanao to come back from perusing the books while seated at the table. While Nanao searched, he had slept most of the time. After checking the time, he made the decision to head home. Before the day ended, he wanted to get in some training. He was also asked to assist with some of the wedding preparations. He planned to accompany Nemu and Isane to select a wedding cake and assist in selecting a caterer. He stretched, sat up, and slowly searched for Nanao. Kid, called Kyuubi. As he searched for Nanao, Naruto mentally answered, Hey Kyuubi, what's up? Just wondering if you going to add glasses to your little love fest? Kyuubi asked. What? Naruto asked, perplexed by the remark. The girl you brought here, Kyuubi said with a sigh, are you going to get with her as well or what? Kyuubi, what the hell? Naruto responded, I'm not going to do that. I love Nemu and Isane. Whatever kid, Kyuubi remarked, I simply believe that more is preferable. With a sigh, Naruto made his way to the second floor in search of Nanao. As he climbed the stairs, he saw Nanao return with a number of books in her arms. Have fun? Naruto asked, smiling and waving her over. Nanao simply nodded and said, it was very enjoyable, sounding a little smug. Naruto nodded, ignoring the arrogance, and said, well, that's good. Let's head home. Nanao went directly to her room as the two swiftly returned to Naruto's house. With a sigh, Naruto went to see how Orihime was doing. He grinned when he discovered her dozing off on her bed. She appeared to be sleeping peacefully. He approached her and put her blanket over her. He smiled as he walked out of her room, whispering, sleep well. He hastily put on his training clothes and reached for his kunai pouch. He made his way to his own training area and began stretching gradually. Swiftly retrieved a kunai from his pouch and hurled it across the training field in the direction of a target. He felt the rush of air approaching him just as he was about to toss another. He saw a fist fly over his head and ducked quickly. He used it to get away from his assailant after blocking a kick to the face. She had golden eyes, purple hair, dark skin, and a tall build. She was dressed in an orange coat, tight fitting pants, and a shirt. As he looked over her, he whistled, but as she entered battle mode, he allowed those thoughts to fade. Without hesitation, he rushed forward and jabbed her face. She retaliated with her own punch after blocking the attack. Naruto threw a hard hook and used his forearm to block the attack. The woman swiftly moved into Naruto's defense after deflecting the blow. She punched him once in the chest. As the punch sailed past him, Naruto twisted sideways. With a swift kick, he struck the woman's side. She hops away from the kick, grinning. Why are you attacking me? Naruto scowls and demands, his voice tinged with rage. The woman simply grinned and rushed ahead. She attacked Naruto with a flurry of punches and kicks. Naruto swiftly counterattacked after blocking the majority of the attacks. The woman refused to back down even after he shoved her away. She lunged forward, launching another round of punches at Naruto. Naruto blocked some of the blows that he was unable to avoid and avoided the majority of them. After throwing a punch over his shoulder, he hurried to confront the female guard. He slammed a series of blows into the woman's body. Despite being sent back by these attacks, the woman's expression was one of amusement. As she cracked her neck and grinned at Naruto, she said, "Well, you do have some skill. I give you that." Naruto tensed as she abruptly vanished from his line of sight. The woman abruptly materialized behind Naruto and whimpered, "But it will take more than that to beat me." Naruto attempted to turn, but the woman's strong kick sent him flying across the training ground. Naruto hurried to his feet and scanned the area for his opponent, only to discover that she had vanished once more. Naruto swiftly deflected a forceful blow aimed at his face after sensing a presence behind him. Quickly turning, he attempted to relate with his own punch, but the woman was not there. Before long, Naruto was engaged in combat with an unseen foe. As he narrowly avoided another blow from the purple-haired woman, he remarked, "It's like fighting bush brows." He moved away from his assailant and blocked another blow. A few feet away, a woman with a slight frown on her face said, "Is that all you have?" in a voice that carried a hint of disappointment. "This is not that much fun." Naruto simply chuckled and stretched a little before saying, "You really shouldn't underestimate me." "Why that?" she asked in a mocking tone, grinning and placing a finger to her chin while giving him a perplexed look. As his eyes gradually turned orange with a line in them, Naruto simply nodded and said, "Simple, it will cost you your life." Naruto rushed forward with incredible speed and punched the woman once. She sidestepped, but then a hard force struck her. She was shocked because she knew she had avoided the blow, but it still hit her. She vanished and attempted to assault him, but he remained motionless. It felt like she was punching steel as her attack connected. As he observed the woman establishing distance, he questioned, "Is that it? I was just starting to have fun." The woman's smile turned to a serious expression, and she responded, "Very cute. I guess I need to get serious," she said. Naruto grinned and said, "That good?" as he assumed his stance. "I was about to say the same thing." With incredible speed, the woman charged forward and launched a flurry of attacks at Naruto. Naruto swiftly retaliated and stopped many of the attacks. The woman continued to shoot toward him after vanishing from his grasp. "Kage Bushin no Jutsu," Naruto exclaimed with a smile before conjuring 10 clones. The woman was charged by the clones, who surrounded her. As she repelled the Naruto clones' attacks, the woman quickly turned into a blur of limbs. While sending 2 more clones to go gather nature chakra, Naruto produced a second wave of clones and directed them towards the woman. Naruto made a Rasengan in his hand and rushed forward as the clones battled the woman. After completing the final set of clones, the woman noticed Naruto running toward her while holding a blue ball. She vanished as she saw the blue ball smash into a tree, destroying it entirely. Watching Naruto turn to face her, she uttered aloud, "Not to self, do not get hit with that." Naruto simply charged at her, launching yet another volley of clones in her direction. That wave of clones was swiftly destroyed by the woman, who then charged at Naruto. She struck Naruto in the face with a forceful right punch, which he promptly parried. Before long, the two were trading blows, with neither party suffering significant injuries. The woman grinned as she left her position after the two parted ways, saying, "Well, that was fun, but I think that enough for now." Naruto gave her a perplexed look. With a trace of rage, he asked, "What do you mean?" The woman grinned and said, "Exactly what I mean, Blondie. I have places to go and people to see. We will do this again sometime." Naruto opened his mouth to say, "Wah," but the woman vanished. He grinned as he surveyed the training area and said, "Damn it. It was at least a fun fight." With Soy Fawn. After working at Ichiruka Ramen, Soy Fawn made her way home slowly. It was the most exhausted she had ever been. It wasn't that exhausting to fight the Espada either. As she walked into her apartment, she thought to herself, who knew that food service was so tiring. A voice in the room asked, "Is my little bee tired?" And Soy Fawn noticed Yoruichi sitting on the table in her feline form. With a sigh, Soy Fawn went to change. When she left her room, she discovered Yoruichi eating ramen at the table while fully clothed. After Yoruichi finished eating, she turned to Soy Fawn and said, "I fought the man who Nemu and Isane are staying with." Soy Fawn gave her a startled look. Then Soy Fawn asked her mentor, "What happened?" She smiled as she said, "It was a fun fight. He is very well trained and holds a lot of power inside of him. He actually provided me with a challenge." With a slightly surprised nod, Soy Fawn said, "Is that good?" With a simple nod, Yoruichi said, "Yes, he is. He was holding back some things. Well, so was I." Do you think he has a weakness we can exploit? Soy. Fawn asked, nodding. Yoruichi said, now that would be telling, as she hurriedly transformed into a cat. Now I am going to get a nice snack. See you later. Soy. Fawn called out, wait, but Yoruichi had already left. She hoped she could find out more about Naruto. From what Ayame had told her about him, she had some knowledge. Since he was a young boy, he had been attending Ichirukas. Many people in the village didn't like him at first, but now he was a huge hero there. When Toshiro entered the apartment with a serious expression on his face, she was startled out of her reverie. He took a seat beside his fellow captain. He said, I have some news. Yes, said Soy. Fawn. He said, I ran into Nanao at the library today. Soy. Fawn gave him a startled look. Nanao alive? She exclaimed, astonished. I thought they killed her. I did as well, said Toshiro. After what happened with her failed extraction of the lieutenants, I would have expected the enemy to execute her, but that doesn't seem like the case. She is being watched by the man who defeated her, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. They have suppressed her Ryastu and now she is powerless. With a nod, Soy. Fawn said, that complicates things. They could be a big threat to the Soul Society if they can suppress our powers. With a faint frown on his face, Toshiro nodded and said, I agree, but that not all I found out. Due to what Nanao have told me, the extraction of Liatuanen's Kuretsuchi and Katetsu will be harder than anticipated. Why is that? Inquired Soy. Fawn. Toshiro declared, they are marrying Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Soy. Fawn exclaimed, they are getting married, with surprise. As Soy. Fawn tried to comprehend the information she had received from Toshiro a few days prior, she simply took her time walking to work. She had no idea that quiet Izan and emotionless Nemu would marry. She didn't understand. Why would they choose to live here and waste their lives? They were abandoning the obligations they had to the Soul Society. After putting on her apron and tying her hair up with a bandana, she went into the stand. What made them want to give up their lives? She asked herself after completing her preparations. What was so special about Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze? When Ayame smiled and walked into the stand, she snapped out of her reverie. Good morning, Soy, she smiled. How are you doing today? Soy. Fawn returned the smile. With a slightly strained tone, she stated, I am doing okay. Ayame gave a nod. She said, that's good, and made her way to the front of the stand. When a question arose, Soy. Fawn trailed behind. She decided to ask Ayame and her father for information about Naruto because she knew they knew a lot about him. Ayame would always engage him in conversation, as she had observed on multiple occasions when she saw him at the stand. She approached Ayame and began cleaning the counter. Ayame, she said, getting ready to ask. Yes, Soy, Ayame said, grinning as usual. She watched Ayame's face light up with surprise as she asked, can you tell me about Naruto Uzumaki? With a tone of caution, Ayame questioned, why do you want to know? Well, back in the wave, he's a big hero from my home, Soy. Fawn said, grinning. I just wanted to know what he was really like, not the stories they told at home. At this response, Ayame appeared to calm down. Naruto had told her about the events in the wave. With a note of relief in her voice, she answered, I would be happy to tell you. Happy to receive information that she hoped would be helpful in the future, Soy. Fawn grinned at Ayame. Orihime rubbed the sleep from her eyes as she slowly got out of bed. She had told Yoruichi how she felt about Naruto a few days prior. She simply wanted to be left alone because she was still unable to understand why she was feeling this way. As she examined herself in the mirror, she asked herself, what is wrong with me? A knock on Orihime's door startled her, and she turned in time to see Naruto poke his head inside her room. Calmly, hey, Orihime, he said. Can I come in? With a startled expression, Orihime said, sure, as Naruto entered grinning. He stood beside her bed and asked in a loving tone, how have you been? Orihime remained quiet for a while. She was able to say, I have been doing well, in her typical vivacious manner. When Naruto saw her smile, he realized something was amiss. The smile was too big to not be concealing something. He made the decision to discover what she was concealing. She appeared to be carrying a lot of weight. He asked earnestly, do you want to go out somewhere? Orihime briefly displayed a worried expression, but it vanished as soon as it appeared. Being by herself with Naruto made her feel a little uneasy. She was aware that her feelings for him were more intense than those she had for Ichigo. Orihime hurriedly said, I'm fine, unwilling to remove her mask. I'd rather relax here. After saying, sorry, but I am not taking no for an answer, he took Orihime's hand. Orihime attempted to object, but the two quickly left her room. Before long, she discovered that Naruto was standing beside her in a park. Naruto gave Orihime a smile and held her hand as they walked through the park. His words were, "Enjoy yourself, just relax." Orihime simply nodded slowly while glancing at Naruto. As she walked silently next to him, she couldn't help but glance at him. She couldn't help but smile when she saw the big smile on his face. As they strolled, he said, "So, anywhere you want to go, Orihime?" Orihime remained quiet for a while. Unsure of what to say, she said, What do you want to do?" After a brief period of silence, Naruto broke into a tiny smile. He squeezed Orihime's hand and said, "I have a great idea," which caused her to flush. "Let's go." Orihime was swiftly led by Naruto through the park to a clearing with a sizable lake in the center. He guided her to the edge of the water and observed her face. The sight of the lake, the sunlight dancing in the trees and reflecting off the water, astounded Orihime. She said, "This is amazing," with a joyful tone. Naruto gave a nod. "It is," he said, grinning. "This is a place I like to come and relax and enjoy a good swim." She said, "I wish we could swim," with a disappointed tone. She didn't see the cunning smile on Naruto's face. He answered, "Who says we can't?" Orihime gave him a look. "We can't, we don't have swimming suits," she said. He took her hand, said, "We can fix that easily," and then he flashed to the town's shopping area. Orihime felt a little lightheaded from the unexpected flash. Naruto simply laughed at her situation. He waited for her to recover from her drowsiness. "You okay?" he inquired. Orihime nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said, trying to look him in the eye. "Warn a girl when you're going to do that." Naruto simply laughed a little and nodded. He said, "As you wish, Haim," as Orihime reddened. Taking her hand, Naruto guided her into a store. "Take a look around and find a swimsuit you like." Orihime simply gazed in wonder at the line of bathing suits. She glanced at Naruto, who merely gave her a smile. "Okay," she said hastily so as not to blush once more. As she proceeded down the aisle, she was immediately drawn to a light blue bikini. She successfully and eagerly discovered her size. She returned to Naruto on foot. "Found it," she said, her voice bouncy. Naruto gave her a somewhat amazed look. "That was fast," he said, sounding surprised. With a simple smile, Orihime moved toward the counter, Naruto trailing behind. He snatched Orihime's hand and hastily paid for the swimsuit. "Ready to go?" she said, "Let me change first," and sprinted to the dressing room. She changed fast, then came out to Naruto. Naruto couldn't take his eyes off of Orihime as he gazed over her in wonder. The sweet smile on her lips and the way the swimsuit fit her body. She blushed a little and asked, "How'd I look?" Naruto said, "Amazing," in a tone of wonder. She stumbled, "Thank you," trying to cover her flushed face. One of the store clerks was standing there when the two of them heard someone giggle. The clerk said, "You two are such a cute couple," with a cheerful tone. Orihime was shocked by the clerk's words, and the two of them flushed. Naruto blushed a little and said, "Let's go," and Orihime nodded. They vanished in an instant after he extended his hand to Orihime. As soon as they arrived at the lake, they parted ways. Gazing at Orihime, Naruto asked himself, "What's wrong with me? I getting married soon? Why am I getting flustered by another girl?" Kurama said, "You are falling for her, kid," with a knowing tone. Naruto denied, "I am not," while attempting to avoid eye contact with Orihime. When Naruto denied it, Kurama simply chuckled. He said, "Your denial is all the evidence I need," with a malevolent tone. "Just picture it. She slowly comes out of the water, the light dancing across her body. She slowly walks over to you and leans into your chest, her luscious red lips heading toward yours." Naruto shook his head abruptly as he started to visualize it. Naruto yelled, "Shut it, you dumb fuzzball," at Kurama. Kurama simply did not stop laughing. Saying, "You can't deny it forever, kid," he smiled mischievously. "Make her yours." Naruto turned his attention to Orihime, quickly ignoring Kurama. Although she was still a little agitated, Naruto found it enhanced her beauty. Naruto approached hastily. He asked, trying to control his emotions, "Ready to swim?" Naruto hurriedly put on his swimming trunks after she nodded. With a, "Let's going," he leapt into the water. Orihime gave him a nod and followed him in. The two simply started swimming and having fun, putting their mutual nervousness aside. Orihime noticed that Naruto had abruptly vanished from view. She wondered, where did he go? As she felt a hand suddenly grab her from behind and haul her out of the water. When she turned and screamed, she saw that Naruto was holding her. She begged, "Put me down." Orihime splashed back into the water after Naruto simply laughed and released her. She splashed Naruto after swiftly rising to the surface. That wasn't funny, she said, her voice irritated. Naruto merely grinned. Yes it was, he stated as he laughed, while Orihime pouted. She glared at Naruto and he soon cracked under the pressure. He gave her a sheepish smile, sorry. Orihime tried to continue glaring at Naruto, but she was unable to do so. I forgive you, she sighed, and Naruto simply smiled and embraced her. Orihime blushed as she felt his body against hers, and she turned slowly until she was facing Naruto and met his eyes. Because it was such a novel sensation, she couldn't resist losing herself in them. She leaned in close and kissed him, and soon after, she felt Naruto kiss her back and draw her nearer to him. As they separated, Orihime opened her eyes gradually and realized what she had done, breaking Naruto's hold. I'm sorry, she said in a terrified tone, and she swam as fast as she could to get away from Naruto. What was I thinking? Hold on. She didn't intend to kiss him, but the moment felt so right as she never felt that with Ichigo, but with Naruto it was as obvious as Daya and she ran through the trees and into the village. Naruto not far behind. Naruto called after Orihime, but she didn't stop. She desperately wanted to get away from him as quickly as possible. The kiss surprised Naruto, but it felt right to him too, knowing that he had feelings for Orihime and she had feelings for him. He was about to try to talk to her when she ran away, and he wanted to find her as soon as possible. He ran after her, but she seemed to always keep a few feet away from him despite his shinobi skills. Why am I unable to apprehend her? As he followed Orihime into the market area, he thought, an Anbu landed next to me. As he ran alongside Naruto, the Anbu said, Namikaze. Sama. The Hokage wishes to see you in her office right now. Frowning, Naruto asked, why now? He thought as he started to slow down. He didn't want to leave Orihime alone, but Chan wanted him that instant. It must be important. Lead the way. Orihime had never been so bold in her life, and she simply ran and ran until she was lost in the village, still crying as she wiped away the tears slowly, seeking to control her emotions but finding it impossible. Why did I give him a kiss? As she attempted to relax, she asked herself, what have I done? Orihime. A voice spoke up behind Orihime. She turned to see Izan and Nemu standing there holding a number of bags. After glancing at the two, Orihime rushed into Isane's arms and sobbed uncontrollably. Izan began to comfort her as best she could after glancing down at the emotional mess before her. She said to Nemu, let's get her home, and Nemu nodded. The sobbing Orihime is swiftly led to their home by the two. Orihime, crying uncontrollably, sniffed as she and Izan sat on the coach. Orihime, Izan uttered with concern. Orihime continued to cry and refused to respond when they asked, what's wrong? She didn't want to tell them. She whispered, I kissed him, while crying. Izan cocked her head, perplexed. Izan asked, already fairly certain of the answer, who did you kiss? Orihime simply gave a headshake. Izan simply held the girl who was crying. It's okay, it will be alright. Orihime simply did not stop sobbing. Ikea kissed Naruto. She came out with a choke. She was very embarrassed. Izan understood Orihime's feelings and held her close without saying anything. Despite her intense conflict, Naruto had accepted her after Nemu gave her the right encouragement. Orihime, on the other hand, was in a similar predicament and could only offer consolation and encouragement. Orihime attempted to wipe away her tears as she gradually moved away from Izan. When Izan saw this, she grinned. Orihime gave Izan a look. Please, can I have some time to myself? Izan scowled, but she understood that Orihime needed that time to process her emotions before facing Naruto once more. That's fine, she put back. I'll be back soon. Orihime watched Izan go, nodding. Despite her best efforts, she was unable to stop crying. She was suddenly surrounded by the warmth of someone she knew. Unsure of what to do, she turned around and continued to sob into Yoruichi's nude form. With a hint of annoyance on his face, Naruto emerged in front of Tsunade. He was agitated after meeting Orihime. Unfortunately, he didn't want to deal with the reason Tsunade had called him. Hokage. Sama, Naruto uttered icily. Tsunade scowled in response. She didn't have time to think about it, but he always referred to her as Ka-san unless he was angry or irritated. She said, Naruto, I have called you here for an important mission, with a firm voice. Kumo has requested your help with an incident that has just happened. This caused Naruto to frown. In the hopes that B would not be harmed, he inquired, what happened? Tsuande handed Naruto a file on the incident and said, it appears that Samahata has been stolen. Killer B had left it in his home and came back to find a large hole in the wall and that the sword was missing. Naruto responded, that should have been impossible, while examining the supplied crime scene photographs. Samahata won't let anyone touch it except its owner. Tsunade chimed in, or someone with chakra it really likes. Samahata is a living sword and seems to like very tasty chakra. We believe that the person who had taken it, had chakra it enjoys. We want you to track this person down and bring Samahata back to Kumo. He inquired, will I be receiving any backup? Kumo was going to send B after the thief, but the Raikage's Anbu have stated that the thief is now out of lighting country and headed into fire. You are to intercept them as soon as possible. Tsunade said. We will provide an Anbu capture team to help secure them. Naruto gave a nod. He said, I understand, and turned to go. As he left her office, Tsunade simply nodded and observed, I will be back soon. She hoped he was okay. The Samahata was an extremely difficult sword, and its wielder had to be a powerful force. She whispered to herself, be safe, as she watched her son leave to once again face extreme danger. Naruto showed up at his house wearing a worried expression. This mission comes after Orihime. His day had changed in an instant. He entered and glanced around. Naneo was in a chair on the back porch, and Nemu was reading a book on the couch. There is no sign of Izan or Orihime. Naruto approached Nemu. He bent over and gave her a quick kiss. Hey babe, he said, grinning a little. Nemu simply gazed at her beloved. Hello, she said in her monotone voice, her cheeks slightly flushed. Where have you been? Naruto sat down beside Nemu. He said, was out with Orihime, in a weary tone. We were having a great time but Thina. She kissed you, Nemu concluded for him, leaving him shocked. His expression was one of shock as he asked, how did you know? She answered, Izan told me, Orihime came home crying and she comforted her, you should go see her. Naruto gave a nod. I know, he responded, but Tsunade has given me a mission for which I have to leave right away. Nemu gave this realization a small frown. The statement, that is unfortunate, she said. You need to clear things with Orihime or it will get worse. He said, I will, once I get back, and got to his feet. I have to get going. I'll be back soon, love. Nemu gave a nod, got up, and proceeded to Orihime's room. She was determined to resolve this matter as soon as possible. Adding a second bride would be simpler than keeping things the way they are. As she got closer to Orihime's room, she was ready to knock when she heard voices inside. The second voice was that of someone she didn't recognize, but she could clearly hear Orihime's. She could tell that the voice was that of a woman. Nemu became suspicious of this development and hurriedly opened the door. She noticed Yoruichi and Orihime sitting on the bed, their faces in tears. She said, Yoruichi Shiwan, in a chilly voice. Seeing you here is unexpected. That's a long story, Yoruichi said with a simple smile, but Nemu didn't appear to be listening. Orihime, Nemu said, approaching the chubby-faced girl, you have to talk to Naruto right now. Orihime's eyes began to well up with more tears when she heard Naruto's name. I can't, she stumbled, clutching Yoruichi. Nemu scowled. You must, she said, glancing at the sobbing girl. You don't have time to think because he's going to leave. You have to determine whether or not your feelings are genuine. They will either be returned or received by Naruto. If you try to do anything that will cause Izan or me to go back to the Soul Society, I will have no choice but to end you, Nemu said as she left the room, leaving a sobbing Orihime in her wake. Orihime remained silent. As Naneo entered the house, she noticed that Naruto's room door was open, and she peered inside to see him standing close to one of the walls, which was lined with various weapons, some of which he was now removing from the wall and placing on his person, as if he were getting ready for battle. Oh, it's you, he said as he closed the weapon closet by pressing his hand over a seal next to the wall after turning to see Naneo standing there. Naneo simply nodded. What's happening? She inquired. He said, just some work, and left the room. This made Naneo's ears perk up. What kind of work? She asked, beginning to follow Naruto to the front of the house. He said, that is something you don't need to know, after quickly checking his weapons. Now, be a good girl, and I bring you back a present. This made Naneo scowl. Flattery will get you nothing, she said, turning away. Naneo grinned as she watched Naruto simply shake his head and leave the house, thinking, this could be the opportunity they've been waiting for. She needed to contact Captain Hitsugaya. After arriving at the village's front gate, Naruto began his search for the thief, soon joined by a group of Anbu, and nodded to them as they leapt from tree to tree. What was the thief's last known location? As they traveled, he inquired. In response, an Anbu wearing a bird-shaped mask said, the thief was last seen 30 miles from our current position, moving at extreme speeds. As he considered a strategy, Naruto nodded and said, okay, I want you and Spider to keep track of the enemy's position. If at all possible, steer them toward my position. I'll attempt to position myself ahead of them and prepare an ambush. Rabbit will be our means of communication. The entire Anbu nodded. Roger, they all said, and they all went their separate ways. Naruto grinned as he accelerated, sending a clone to begin collecting nature chakra, and soon his eyes were outlined in a recognizable shade of orange. He said, "Time to catch a thief," and accelerated even more. "And after you're done, tap your ass," Kurama exclaimed in a joyful tone, and Naruto almost missed his next branch as a result. No obscene conversation on missions, Kurama. The fox only laughed in Naruto's head when he yelled at it. The thief was very good at staying ahead of Naruto's team, but they had finally caught up after 3 days of pursuing him with the Anbu. Spider and Bird were pushing the thief toward one of the more open areas of the forest, where Naruto had set up his ambush and was waiting for the thief to show up. He heard someone running toward his position and prepared himself. After taking a few kunai out of his weapon pouch and waiting, Naruto launched his kunai at a white blur that appeared out of the trees, deflecting the attack but losing some momentum and landing in the clearing. Naruto tried to stab the thief after charging forward with 2 kunai, but the thief lifted Samahata, blocked his attack, and pushed him back. Naruto skidded back a little, but had to jump back when another sword fell toward him. The thief simply lifted Samahata and deflected the attack after Naruto spun away from it and threw a kunai at him. "Why are you attacking me?" With a distinctly feminine voice, the thief demanded. "You have taken something that doesn't belong to you," Naruto said somewhat defensively, adding, "We are just here to take it back." "I have taken nothing," she said, and the thief appeared to frown. "Now, leave me in peace or be killed." "You're lying," Naruto said, smirking, as he got ready to strike. "That bandaged sword in your hand doesn't belong to you." Just as the thief was about to respond, Samahata appeared to speak to her. "The Samahata says it wants to be with me," she said, adding, "He is my guide to this world." "So, it chose you as its user," Naruto said with concern, scowling. "I still can't let you leave though." After glancing at Naruto, the thief lowered her hood to reveal a woman with dark brown skin, short blonde hair, and bright green eyes. She tore off her cloak to reveal her body, and her extremely revealing top left little room for interpretation. "Damn," thought Naruto and Kurama as they gazed at her in wonder, "she's hot." "The third Espada, and your demise. My name is Tear Haribel," she said, raising Samahata and another sword in her hands. With her Samahata and Tiburon in hand, Tia stood in the clearing, poised to attack the blonde man in front of her. All she wanted was to be left alone so she could try to find her way back to her Fraxion. She would leave this world and defend her Fraxion from the Vandenreich's onslaught. Not taking any chances, Tia charged forward with the Samahata at her side, flying into the smoke with her Samahata raised high and brought him down. "Ola Azul," she cried, and hurled a blast of yellow energy at her enemy. The attack struck her target and produced a cloud of smoke, and she watched as her target flipped away from the attack and threw more tiny knives at her. As she prepared to destroy her target, Tia looked at him and then at the Samahata, recalling how she got here, and used the Samahata to block the attack and send back another blast while watching him dodge and put some distance between them. Rewind after Azean was defeated by Ichigo Kurosaki, Tia became the ruler of Hueco Mundo and stood with her Fraxion, watching as the Vandenreich marched toward her palace. She scowled as she saw many of the smaller hollows destroyed by the attacking Quinces, knowing that she and her Fraxion would soon be at the center of the battle. With narrowed heterochomia eyes, one of her Fraxion gazed at the advancing forces. "Those damn Quinces," she uttered angrily, "they think they can challenge Haribel. Sama and win, ha." Tia held up her hand to stop her as she charged a Sero and was ready to shoot it at the enemy forces. "Calm yourself, Apache," she said in a firm voice, "don't let your anger get the better of you." With a slow release of the Sero, Apache nodded and said, "Yes, Haribel." Sama, in a tone of submission. Sun said, "That's right, Apache," with her lavender eyes amused and her sleeve covering her mouth. "We don't want you to do something rash." "Shut it, Snaky," Apache yelled angrily as he glared at Sun. "Guys, this is not the time to argue," Mila Rose said calmly, letting out a little sigh as she observed her two sisters' interactions. Glaring at Mila Rose, Apache said, "Stop it, gorilla," she yelled. "That's it," Mila Rose scowled at Apache. She yelled and advanced on Apache. Tia turned to face her disputing Fraxion and said, "Enough. We don't have time for your trivial arguments," she said loudly. "Get ready for combat." Mila Rose, Apache, and Sun all bowed their heads and said, "Yes, Haribel." Sama, simultaneously. "I am Tear Haribel," Tia declared authoritatively. "You have attacked us without just cause, and this will be your death." She launched her large yellow Sero at the Quinces and watched as her Fraxion Seros joined it. Tia started to charge a Sero and pointed it toward the invading Quinces. Her Fraxione also started to charge their individual Seros and aimed it at the approaching enemy. Tia simply looked at the attack with disdain and fired a bala to destroy the oncoming attack. The stronger Quincies managed to escape in time and retaliated with a hail of blue energy arrows, but the attacking force had little time to avoid the attacks and many of the weaker Quinces were killed. Ola Azul, she said coldly, drawing her Zanpakuto and Tiburon. You are nothing, she said, and a huge cloud of smoke filled the air as her attack struck. Ola Azul, she said, a huge yellow wave shooting from her sword into the Kinesis. After using a Sonido to dodge the attack, Tia abruptly raised her blade and blocked an oncoming attack from behind, turned, swiftly stabbed her attacker, and proceeded to the next Quincy, quickly becoming a warrior of much death as she ruthlessly killed Quincy after Quincy. She was watching intently to see if any Quinces survived and was met with a large arrow flying toward her. When she had to dodge a large sword that was approaching from behind her, she killed another Quincy. She turned to see a tall man with a broad chin, pronounced cheekbones, and long black hair that blew in the wind. He was wearing a white double-breasted trench coat with the Vandenreich symbol in the middle, large button cuffs and lapels, white pants, and trench boots. On top of this, he was wearing a tattered black cloak that was ankle-length, with a red ribbon close to the neck and secured to the left with a single large button. His voice was deep and icy as he said, "It seems you were able to dodge my attack, my dear Arankar," adding, "I might have to put some effort in your capture." "Who are you, and why are you attacking us?" Tia simply pointed a Tiburon at the man while glaring at him. She insisted. "I am Juhabak, the Emperor of the Vandenreich," he declared authoritatively, "and I am here to claim what is mine." The man simply grinned. Tia glared at Juhabak and yelled, "I will not let you have Hekwo Mundo," raising her sword in front of her and saying, "Hunt Tiburon." Her form was covered in a lot of heart-shaped water, which she cut in half to reveal her resurrection form. She then charged forward, bringing the large blade down on the Quincy Emperor. "Weak," he said wearily, "is that the best the Queen of Hollows can muster?" Juhabak raised the blade and easily deflected the attack. Tia separated from Juhabak and observed that blue energy was enveloping her sword. Trident. She struck Juhabak with 3 high-force slashes, but he ducked under each one and rushed forward with his blade, colliding with Tia's. He said in a bored tone, "Well, I guess you are not as strong as you seem, and I'll just finish you here." His next blow sent Tia flying, and she hit the ground hard before trying to stand up when she saw Juhabak standing in front of her. She raised her sword, but he kicked her hard in the stomach. As the Juhabak kick struck its target, Tia lost all of her breath. How is this possible? As Juhabak used his hand to lift her off the ground, she wondered, how is he this strong? "Some queen," Juhabak said in a chilly tone, "you are nothing," as he simply looked at Tia with disdain. "You will be shackled for the rest of your life because you are weak." Tia hung there, helpless, trying to free herself from his hold, but her body would not react. "You bastard, let go of Haribel." "Sama." As Tia watched Apache shoot a Sero at Juhabak, a recognizable voice yelled. "I will destroy you," she said in a chilly voice. "Cascada." Juhabak glanced at the attack and swatted it away with a simple flick, but this gave Tia the time she needed to escape his hold. She hurled a huge stream of water at Juhabak and observed its forward motion. Tia watched as the energy raced toward her and fired a Sero to stop the attack, while Juhabak watched as the wave approached him and raised his blade high, gathering his strength as his sword started to glow, and shouting, "This is nothing." He fired a wave of blue energy that connected with the water and cut straight through it. After a struggle for control, the two attacks started to distort the air. Tia felt the distortion pull at her and attempted to Sonido away, but the distortion was too strong, and her attack waned, allowing Juhabak's attack to close the distortion while she was inside it. With a smile on his face, Juhabak slowly stalked toward the wounded Frashians, watching but not seeing her vanish into the distortion. "I guess she was destroyed," he said, turning to Tia's Fraxione, adding, "I guess you 3 will have to serve as my examples." With Tia floated in the distortion in agony, feeling the various powers coursing through her form causing her great pain, feeling her hollow powers clash with an unidentified force, and then experiencing unfathomable pain at her hollow hole. She barely opened her eyes, watching in horror and fascination as it slowly started to close. "What the fuck is happening to me?" As her hollow hole completely closed, she thought, before she blacked out from pain, she felt an influx with the mysterious force in her hollow powers. Sometime later, Tia, still in excruciating pain but conscious, felt something repeatedly press against her arm. She opened her eyes slowly, then closed them quickly as the light briefly blinded her, surveying her surroundings, which included trees and the blue sky above. "Where am I?" As she attempted to move, she said. A female voice next to her said, "You're in my place," and she turned to see a big sword with 4 limbs protruding from it and a big mouth at the end. The sword was primarily covered in white stripes. "Who are you?" She questioned the sword. "I am Samahata," said the sword with a gleeful tone, "and I'm glad you're awake, mistress." "Mistress?" Surprised, Tia answered, "What do you mean?" "Obviously, you are my new wielder," Samahata said, adding, "I could not ask for a more ideal chakra. It's really delicious." Even though she didn't fully comprehend, Tia had a gut feeling that the sword was telling the truth. "Can you help me?" she inquired. After saying, "Of course I can, mistress," Samahata seized Tia's jacket and dragged her into the trees, where she watched the trees swiftly go by before slowly closing her eyes and allowing Samahata to pull her to safety. A few days later, after learning that this world was known as the Elemental Nation, a land governed by shinobi, Tia, wearing a large white cloak that Samahata had given her, walked slowly through the trees. She was very interested in this system, but she didn't have time to stay because she needed to get to her Fraxium. "Hi, mistress? Watch out for those with the cloud headband," Samahata said in a bored tone. Tia nodded, recalling that Samahata had told her about her former master, whom she had voluntarily left. It was as though she were a wizard, a human, or a soul reaper with a hollow power, but she was still in complete control of her own powers. She walked onto the main road, entered a nearby village, and proceeded to gather supplies. Her body had changed in a number of ways that were hard to comprehend, and she knew that the distortion had somehow forced some power in her body, closing her hollow hole, but still allowing her to retain her hollow powers. She didn't realize that 4 shadows were silently following her as she went. They all had the same appearance, wore white masks, and had a cloud-like symbol on top of them. They kept up their pace, passing Tia. Before long, Tia was encircled by trees, and then she heard a faint rustle of leaves. She moved her hands slowly to her Sonito and Tiburon, and then she emerged in the trees, avoiding another ranged attack. Ola Azul jumped in front of her assailants and pointed her Tiburon at them. "Why are you attacking me?" she said, as the explosion destroyed numerous trees and she saw 4 blurs leap from the trees and land on the road. She insisted. "We have our orders," one of the attackers said, brandishing a small blade before rushing forward. Tia deflected the blow, saying, "Your death." Tia was growing weary of this relentless assault on her, so she shoved the man away only to have to avoid another blow from one of his friends. "Use me!" Samahata yelled as Tia rushed forward, nodded, pulled out the big blade, and slashed down on one of the assailants. The other 3 attackers regrouped, 2 charging forward and 1 staying back, but Tia was unable to stop the attack and was shredded as Samahata tore through his body. Tia pushed the attackers away and blocked both attacks with her swords. The lone assailant who remained had completed a series of hand signals. "Raiden! Jabashi!" he yelled, then hurled a powerful lightning bolt at Tia. Tia saw the assault approaching her and exclaimed, "Food! Let me eat," said Samahata cheerfully. "I love a good tangy chakra, and it makes me all tingly," Tia said, hurriedly moving Samahata in front of her and looking down at the seemingly happy, trembling Samahata as she watched in surprise as the sword absorbed the attack. After examining her new sword and deciding to inquire later about its unique ability, Tia charged forward, intercepted one of her attackers, and used the Tiburon to stab them through before swiftly eliminating the other. She was on the verge of eliminating the final member, but they had already escaped. "I'll wait till later, but it seems like the clouds have found you, so let's get going," Samahata said in a dejected tone. "Ah, I wanted more food." Tia nodded and started running, putting a good distance between herself and her assailants and eventually finding a small clearing to rest in. She put Samahata down and leaned back against a tree, watching the sword wiggle as if it were yawning. "What gives you the ability to withstand the attack?" As they sat there, Tia asked the sword. "I've always been able to do it," Samahata said with a tone of satisfaction. "I've had that ability since the day I was born. Chakra is also amazing." "Now, what is chakra?" Tia asked, nodding. She inquired. Samahata clarified, "I must say that you have chakra that is really delicious. Chakra is the combination of physical and spiritual energy that can be used to manipulate the elements for attacks, to create illusions, and to strengthen a person's body. It tastes like sushi made with fresh water." "How can the physical energy be put to use? I am a hollow, I am technically dead," Tia inquired. After a few moments of staring at Tia, Samahata burst out laughing, saying, "Oh mistress, you crack me up. Eating fire chakra all the time makes you as dead as I am." Tia simply turned away, waiting for the laughter to stop. She concentrated on her abilities during this time, feeling her hollow powers immediately, but she also sensed something else inside of her. She closed her eyes and followed the odd sensation throughout her body. Was Samahata referring to this power? When Tia felt this new energy, she didn't realize that her body was glowing. Samahata approached her and began to eat some of it. Tia felt some of the new energy drain away and noticed that Samahata was slowly consuming her energy. She was a little taken aback, but she allowed Samahata to eat while petting the sword. Now time. Following that rest, she was being pursued by her present assailants and engaged in combat with the blonde man. She lunged forward and swung both swords at him, but the blonde ducked and leapt away. "Go, mistress, go!" Samahata yelled with joy. "Destroy him. Permit me to indulge." Tia swung Samahata at the blonde, who blocked with a long knife, and he held the attack before launching a clone at her, which startled her a little, but she quickly dispatched it with the Tiburon. The blonde shoved Samahata away, made 2 more clones, and charged Tia. His first clone attempted to kick Tia, but she deflected the blow with Samahata, who drained the clone of all its chakra, causing it to dispel, while the other clone made a blue sphere and pushed it in Tia's direction. Knowing she would be badly hurt if she were struck, Tia kicked the clone, watched it vanish, and turned back to the original as she ducked the attack and saw it create a giant crater in the ground. With a smile on his face, the man handed her a trench knife and said, "I might have to be serious." "You are really good," he said. "I will have to be serious as well," Tia said, glaring at him and lifting her Tiburon. "Sero." Tia snuck up behind him and attempted to stab him in the back, but he kicked her hard and blocked the attack with his knife as the blonde avoided the Sero and gaped at the devastation it caused. As she watched, the wind began to gather around the knife and rush toward her, and she pushed away from the blonde and dodged another blade of wind before lifting the Tiburon and blocking the attack, only to feel a blast of wind shoot past her. "Yes, wind chakra. I always loved the tropical taste it has," Samahata exclaimed to Tia. Ignoring her sword, Tia launched herself at her assailant, spinning Samahata down hard toward the blonde's head, who held her back and blocked the attack, narrowly avoiding a slash from Tiburon. He put some distance between them and watched Tia warily. That was close, he told himself. Tia, who had not yet made a serious attempt to murder him, glanced at the man in front of her, a little impressed by his abilities. "You have done well so far," she said, laughing. "May I have your name?" The blonde looked at her with a bit of a confused expression. "I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," he said as he watched Tia. "Naruto Namikaze. Well, Naruto, you have demonstrated that you are a capable fighter, but that is not enough to defeat me," Tia remarked, attempting to pronounce his name herself. At what she said, Naruto scowled. "And why is that?" He raised his blade in defense and asked. After using Sonido to vanish from view and reappear behind him, Tia defeated Tiburon and sliced him in 2, saying, "Because you are not even close to my strength." "Man, that was close," Naruto said from behind Tia, causing her eyes to widen slightly. She turned to face Naruto and saw that he was fine. "Now, it's my turn." She watched as Naruto fell to the ground and his body was suddenly covered in smoke, which then cleared to reveal a log. He made 3 clones of himself, and Tia watched in shock as all 4 of them charged at once. She avoided one of them's kicks and destroyed another with a well-placed slash of Tiburon, but she was struck by a kick to her side. She barely felt the impact, and she kept avoiding and counter-attacking the 3 Narutos that were left. Tia raised her swords and remarked, "What an interesting trick, but it won't save you." Tia fired another Sero at the 3 Narutos and took out 2, leaving only the real one. "Well then," he replied as he stood at his full height, "now, I'll have to take it up a notch." She watched as he formed a cross-shaped seal with his hand. Suddenly, he was surrounded in smoke. When 20 Narutos suddenly flew out of the smoke directly at her, some holding tiny blue balls of light, Tia narrowed her eyes and waited for any movement. She jumped back and fired a Sero at the charging attack force, taking out 4 of them while avoiding the remaining attacks. Landing lightly, she blocked a clone's kick and swiftly destroyed it, spinning around and using a wide swing of Samahata to destroy 5 and Tiburon to take out another 3, then hurling a huge wave of water at the remaining clones. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a big blue ball head coming toward her. She was unable to dodge in time and heard the name of the attack before it launched her into the air. Omada Risengan. Tia was a little surprised that she missed, but her face quickly turned to anger as she flew across the clearing and landed hard into the cliff wall, a cloud of smoke covering her. She had taken some damage from the attack, but her Hiero had taken the majority of it. She said, "I will kill him," and got up to leave the smoke. "Yes," seemed to excite Samahata even more. "Let's murder him so I can consume his chakra." With a slow nod of agreement, Tia slowly raised Tiburon and said, "Hunt Tiburon." The Naruto perspective Naruto stood at the other end of the clearing, watching the cloud of smoke from where Tia had landed. He smiled as he was able to get a direct attack on her and hoped it was enough to take her down. He watched her warily as she walked out of the smoke, hardly scratched. Damn, he thought. Kurama watched Tia as well and said, I told you it wouldn't work, adding, she's made of tougher stuff. Naruto sarcastically remarked, you're telling me, and his punch felt like solid steel. Hunt Tiburon, Tia said, and Naruto saw her covered in a heart-shaped pool of water until a huge slash split the water in two, exposing her even more. She was wearing a knee-high boot, a small bone-made skirt, and what appeared to be a bone-like bra, and she had a menacing mask covering her mouth and nose. She also carried a large white blade that appeared to have gills on its side, as well as a fully uncovered samahata. Holy dollar! Was said simultaneously by Naruto and Kurama as they gazed at Tia with wide eyes. Kurama said in a dazed tone, Kid, don't fight her, adding, she's too hot to kill. Naruto simply nodded, but he noticed a massive water blast approaching and quickly sidestepped, only to be struck by another blast of water immediately behind him. He flew back and attempted to recover, but was hit by an even bigger blast of water. Damn, that hurt, Naruto said as he stood up, blood dripping from his arm after he skidded across the ground and landed hard against the cliff face. He barely had time to think before he was launched across the field again, this time avoiding a slash from her white sword before being struck by Samahata, which tore into his side. Kurama declared, we are in trouble, kid, and Naruto stood up coughing up blood. We need to do something and fast. With a resolute expression in his eyes, Naruto said, I know, and got to his feet. Should we demonstrate to her what happens when someone underestimates me? Let's, Kurama said, nodding as he started to gather his chakra and send it into Naruto, who was soon wrapped in his full Biju cloak. Mistress, she said in a slightly frightened tone, we need to go. Samahata started to shake as Tia noticed Naruto's transformation and sensed his power. Before Tia could ask why, Naruto sprang out in front of her and struck her hard in the face. Tia felt the force of the blow and was flung into the air, deflecting it with Tiburon before turning to block another attack with Samahata. She pushed Naruto away after feeling that Samahata couldn't consume the power covering him, then she raised Tiburon and pointed it at him, saying, Trident. He ducked the 3 water blasts she threw at him before Tia attacked him with Tiburon, but he managed to catch the blade and stop it. Even though he was stronger than she couldn't afford to lose, so she scowled as she watched him block the kick that he tried to throw at her and put some distance between them. She threw Tiburon high and said, Cascada. She threw a big wave of water at Naruto and saw him get soaked. Before long, the clearing was completely submerged in water and Naruto was nowhere to be seen. Then, a huge red fist emerged from the water and attempted to seize her. After evading the attack and spotting Naruto leaping out of the water toward her unharmed, Tia raised her blade and got ready to fight on, blocking a kick with Samahata and a punch with Tiburon. She turned to see Naruto grinning as he pushed her away and began charging a small black ball in his hand, saying, Bijudama. She saw him launch a powerful energy blast at her that was even more powerful than her strongest Sero. After avoiding the attack and witnessing the destruction of miles of land, she turned to face Naruto, knowing that if the fight went on, she would be killed. She could not allow that to happen, so she lowered her blades slowly. She lowered her head in defeat and said, I surrender, as Samahata fell out of her hands. After searching for the captain for the majority of the day without success, Naneo hurried through Konoha in the direction of the library, deciding to try the last location she saw him. She entered the library, scanned the shelves, and soon discovered Toshiro standing in the aisle with a cart beside him. She went up to him and said, Captain, I have some great news. That's good, Toshiro said, nodding at Naneo while he carried on stacking books. Naneo stared at him bewildered, but he continued stacking despite her important message. Captain, what are you doing stacking books for? She inquired bewilderedly. It's my job, he said firmly. I work here now, so it's my cover for the time being. I don't care about that. Tell me what you have to say. This has it all, Naneo said quietly, nodding and passing him a piece of paper slowly. I can't tell you much because I'm being followed. It contains information that will assist you in recovering the other lieutenants. As Naneo turned to leave, Toshiro nodded, but then he found himself encircled by 2 individuals, one wearing a tiger mask and the other holding a dove. What is on the paper that you were given? Asked the person wearing the tiger mask. The 2 were silent before Toshiro handed the paper back to them. It is a list of books she was hoping I could find for her, he said, as the man wearing the tiger mask examined it. Toshiro simply grinned while holding the paper, and Tiger Mask said, carry on, and the 2 vanished. In his pocket, he placed the paper next to the actual paper that contained the information. Soon this mess will be over, he said.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.